Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow underway. The Wednesday edition is here. Hope everyone's having a great day. Chad is. I'm going to go ahead and tell that he's having a wonderful Wednesday.
Hutton, ever since the great compliment you paid last week with my jacket that made me look like a coach.
The coaching jacket.
I feel like I'm going to start going more into more evolving into more coach gear.
Good.
Once again, I feel like I've got kind of a coach's zip up on with the hood in the back. So I'm going to go with more and more coach's gear. Yeah.
Tank Williams will join us coming up in 20 minutes. We'll talk NFL and more with the former NFL safety and now betting analyst. Primary complaint each and every Wednesday. We're ready. We'll air our top grievance of the week later this hour. Clay Travis, our fearless leader, the OutKick founder, will be with us coming up in hour 2. Plus, Danny Kanell, he will have the floor to discuss the Seminoles being left out of the college football playoff. That's later today in the show.
Got to hang out with Clay Travis a little bit last night. Speaking of someone who's looking more and more like a coach with his wardrobe, kind of had like a hoodie type pullover, I guess you would call it, but it was sort of a zip up also.
And in the movie Lady Ballers, he's also a coach.
Playing a coach in that movie. So, that's a life imitating art that we saw last night.
Speaking of coaching, Nick Saban, once again in the college football playoff. And, Chad, how quickly things have turned and gone the full circle here. In September, the discussion was, is Saban wanting out? Is this his last year? Is this the final season
the swan song
of the GOAT? After 7 national titles, doesn't seem like the same Bama team. Well, turns out it is. They're back at the college football playoff, and he's going for his 8th title. And as Glenn Guilbeau wrote at OutKick.com, the question is it still the swan song? If you're looking for the perfect exit to go out on top, this would provide that for Saban. And at 72 years old, what's next for him if he does, in fact, get out of coaching? This has been a discussion point across college football for years upon years. How much longer is Nick Saban going to coach? How much longer is Alabama going to be on top of the mountain? Kirby Smart knocked him off the mountain. Georgia with the back-to-back national titles. Now Bama's back in it. And I just don't buy the fact that he envisions a world where he's not the head coach at Alabama, Chad. I think he goes out whenever he's told he has to, and I don't think he ever wants to, given the fact that if you think about the great coaches in college football or just great coaches in general, most of the time they just don't step aside. Especially if you've got things rolling. And the thing about Saban's programs, while he may complain about the current setup or the leadership or things that need to change in recruiting or NIL or buying players, whatever, he has always adapted. Think about the offenses and how that has progressed through the years and how he adapted to the opposite of a pro-style offense, the opposite of what we were used to seeing at quarterback. And since then, he's got a Heisman Trophy winner and then some with what he's produced offensively. He is able to win regardless of the circumstances and adjust accordingly. And that's why he's back in the Final Four right now.
I can't figure out if Nick Saban is Joe Paterno and Bear Bryant in the way that they had nothing else but football. That's all they wanted to do was be a coach. Not a ton of interest outside of that. And they, for both men, they essentially coached their teams until they died. And once they stopped coaching, they died.
Yep.
Does he view himself as that he's going to die in a lot of ways if he stops coaching? Or does he have enough interest, or maybe he's entertaining the notion of wanting to do some television? He's very good at it. He likes doing television as the coach of Alabama. He's on every studio show. He gets invited on. He does a lot of interviews throughout the week. So he's gotten better and better at it. I think he's always had the ability to do it. It's about the desire, whether or not he really wants to speak on something that will trip him up. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. He's not falling off in any way. So he could continue to coach Alabama at a very high level. My big question would be, what does he want ultimately? Does he want to try to transition into a new stage of his life where he's not working the hours of the head coach at Alabama and maybe getting into the TV game, or not, or just spending time with grandkids and going to his lake house and doing nothing? I don't know that he's wired to do nothing for extended periods of time. So I don't see that being the case. Does he want to do television? I don't know. Again, I think Nick Saban is going to offer the college football world even more outside of coaching, whether that be someone that we can watch and listen to all the time on television that gives honest, thoughtful opinion on the state of the sport, or as someone who one day is the commissioner of college football. Wherever this NCAA proposal is going with this new subgenre of college football programs that's going to be the elite of the elite, they're going to need someone to run that. And I could see Nick Saban being that also. I say all of it to say I don't know what he wants. He's always struck me someone, though, that will just coach until he dies.
That's the way I feel that's going down that path.
I also think, it's Nick Saban is someone who's going to be good at whatever he does. And the more I watch him on television, I'm thinking, man, we talked about earlier in the year, you want to talk about the perfect replacement for Lee Corso as the coach on College Game Day, as an example. It would be amazing to see Nick Saban every Saturday for 3 hours talking about college football and different programs and situations. That would be great, but I don't know what ultimately he's going to want.
I just don't. I don't view the coach who is sprinting to the student section after the victory over Tennessee, getting the team turned around where they were, they're down until halftime and then they make adjustments. And I don't view the coach who has had maybe his best coaching effort this year as it being the last and final say on his coaching career. Glenn Guilbeau also wrote that he's like, imagine the swan song season of next year if they went ahead and announced that it's his final year, and how that would impact recruiting, come be a part of the final year of Nick Saban at Bama, and how would it impact the path they would go, the direction they would go with the next coach that Saban would have the blessing of. He would knight the next head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
See,
that would be fun, but I don't think he's like that either.
I also don't think that benefits anyone unless your successor's on staff. Mike Krzyzewski's swan song season worked out well because John Shire, everyone knew, was going to be the next head coach.
Yeah.
And he was there. So you could hold a recruiting class together.
The coach in waiting.
John Shire's the one who's doing the bulk of the recruiting anyways for Coach K at that point. He's selling the fact that the culture and the program is going to stay the same. I'm just going to be the head coach. That's how you'd have to do it, where Nick Saban says, I'm done after this year, and oh, by the way, this person on staff is taking over. I don't know who that person is on staff for Alabama right now that he would anoint the next person to lead the program, because to counter what Glenn Guilbeau is kind of saying in that piece, and I haven't had the chance to read it yet, and I need to.
Yeah.
But I don't know that announcing it's your final season while simultaneously announcing that the athletic director, Greg Byrne, is going to launch a search for the next head coach, that's going to destroy your recruiting class.
Yeah.
In the meantime, no one's going to sign up to go there because they have no idea who they're going to play for at that point. But if the bulk of the staff's going to stay together and it's just Nick Saban retiring and you're elevating someone, then yes, if that's the way you want to go out, that would be awesome.
Well, and Milroe's back, right? You're getting some great players back on the roster who aren't leaving. And you've got a chance to go after number 9 if you win 2 more games, instead of just going out on 8. And the discussion we were having in September, Chad, was why did he come back if this is going to be the final year and he knows it, based on the team that we saw on the field then? And now you see why, because of how this team has developed. I think the evidence is clear. He really likes coaching this team.
Yeah, he does.
It's not an unlikable team.
He's got a renewed spirit.
Yeah.
I think he lost some of that spirit, it felt like, just watching him a year ago. And this team has revitalized that spirit within him of wanting to coach. I'm curious to see, though. I don't think Nick Saban is the type that in his mind, the way it works with all he's accomplished, I don't think he's going to allow either a great ending or a bad ending to dictate when he retires.
Agreed.
So from the outside looking in, him winning a national championship and then announcing that he's done, that sounds perfect. And the perfect conclusion for Nick Saban to be buried in September and then rally and not lose another game, win the SEC title, win a national championship, retire. That's the storybook ending. But Nick Saban could go 7-5 in some odd year and say, guys, it's just not in me anymore. I'm done. And he's not going to let the 7-5 record affect his legacy or his thought about when he should be done, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't think any outcome in any year is going to be a motivating factor of whether or not he should retire. It's just solely whether or not he wants to keep doing it, and he certainly seems like someone who wants to keep doing it right now.
Chad, one thing I do know, I want Saban to be a part of college football when we see the Super Conference form and we see the expansion to the new television deal, whatever that is, television and streaming, for what will be more millions upon millions moving forward after the 12-team playoff contract expires, which will be in 2026, I believe.
Yeah, I think he would be the perfect
27.
touchstone for different eras of football to have been touched by Nick Saban. That's why I think
and his input.
He would be the perfect czar of college football, ushering in this new era of rules surrounding name, image, likeness, of what schools can pay out of the trust, of the 50 to 60 teams that are playing top-level college football, scheduling, everything else. I think that would be neat, 30, 40 years from now. Well, we think that Nick Saban would be gone by then, but who knows? The man may live forever.
The statue will be there.
30, 40 years from now, we look back to the beginning of this era of college football and think, oh, Nick Saban was the first ever czar or commissioner of what we now know as college football, and he coached and lived through everything and all those other advancements throughout his career, going back to the late 80s, early 90s. That would be pretty cool.
Loyal to the game is college football is Nick Saban. Chad, loyalty is a two-way street, and we're seeing it play out right now across college football, the portal and coaching movement.
Look no further than Lexington, Kentucky for the perfect example of this, and specifically with the quarterback position. A year ago, they went in the portal and grabbed Devin Leary from NC State. Destin Wade, one of two twin brothers, Destin and Keaton Wade, that were playing for Kentucky. Well, Destin and Keaton Wade this week announced that they are transferring from Kentucky, and their dad did an interview with Kentucky Sports Radio and blasted Mark Stoops in the program for lying and not keeping their promises about their son. Being told that after Destin started last year's Music City Bowl, and not a great performance, but a bad offense that point in the year, against Iowa, that he was too good of an athlete to be left off the field. He was going to get his shot. Well, he was third-string quarterback this year. Kaya Sharon was the second-string quarterback for Kentucky. He started a couple games last year also. Kaya Sharon is not going to be a quarterback at Kentucky either anymore. Why? Because Mark Stoops doesn't want either one of them to be quarterback. Because I'm guessing somewhere in September or October, when Brock Vandagriff, the five-star Georgia quarterback, was told before the season that he was not going to be the starter, that backline communication started working and teams started to figure out who their next quarterback was going to be. Because I don't think it's just a coincidence that Vandagriff announces he's transferring to Kentucky from Georgia this quickly after the SEC championship game. I don't think it was all worked out in the last 3 or 4 days. And also with those guys transferring out, I think they knew for a while they were going to get passed up by a transfer. I don't say this to point fingers or place blame at Kentucky or Vandagriff or the players transferring out of Kentucky or anyone else. I am saying this to simply state that loyalty is a two-way street in the transfer portal. And while people are up in arms about players not showing a lot of loyalty and going for the highest dollar somewhere else and not sticking with their pledge to university, there are plenty of coaches right now that see this happening and think to themselves, this is a great opportunity for me to trim the fat on my roster. This fat sophomore offensive guard that I have who can't get in shape. See ya. Let's go tell him to go look somewhere else. Hey, buddy, transfer portal's open. GTFO, and we'll go find a new offensive guard from somewhere else that is in better shape. This is happening all over college football. It's not just quarterbacks leaving for big money or wide receivers deciding they want to go try to win a championship somewhere else or play with a better quarterback. It's also coaches saying, you're not good enough, get out, and we're going to go find someone else. And I'm not sitting here, trying to cry. I'm not shedding tears over any of this. I'm just stating the obvious that coaches are using the transfer portal to their advantage by kicking guys off the team more openly, where in years past that was always frowned upon. Yes, scholarships were year to year, but the understanding was when you sign a scholarship, you are a Kentucky Wildcat through and through, or you're a part of the Alabama Crimson Tide family forever, or you're a Purdue Boilermaker till you die. That's no longer the case. Loyalty is a two-way street, and Hutton right now there's not a ton of it in college football on either side.
No, and from the quarterback position specifically, Chad, I think that's what has led to some bad quarterback play early on in careers in the NFL, even at the top level. Because I'm looking at all the quarterbacks that are moving into different systems, or the fact that their offensive coordinator, their quarterback coach, what have you, head coach, on the move, and they're not following them, and it's a new system. I don't think that always tracks with the best opportunity for the player. And, it's manufactured now, the movement, by name, image, likeness, more so than the actual development. And different coaches are developing quarterbacks in different ways, different systems, using them in different ways. I don't think that's great for the quarterback growth, and I think that has stunted it a bit. So if you want to go back to 21, when NIL was wide open and we saw the portal and everything else, to me, that's more that indicates more to me about why we've seen some offensive numbers go way low this year in the NFL compared to 21 and 22, because I think the quarterbacks, and it goes across the board, I don't think the coaching aspect is there, because guys are playing musical chairs. Dylan Gabriel, Kyle McCord, Cam Ward, Riley Leonard, Max Johnson, DJU, McCall. Like, these guys are all headed elsewhere.
Well, I want to talk more about this later. There's only one group in college sports that's loyal right now. It's the fans. Those are the one that's sticking through it, through and through. Everyone else, there's not loyalty, coach or player.
Tank Williams joins us next on Hot Mic.
Victoria's Secret used to be sexy. On that note, let's talk about Victoria's Secret, because we continually talk about saving women's spaces, their sports leagues, their locker rooms, but we've never actually talked about their dressing rooms in retail stores. Well, now we also are getting the opportunity to talk about that one, because the other day, according to an article by Newsweek, a trans woman started complaining on social media that Victoria's Secret mistreated them because they wanted to use a dressing room in one of their stores. So the trans person tweeted out this, quote, "I was trying to find a cute bra at Victoria's Secret, and they made me wait until every cis woman left the dressing rooms before I could go into one of them. They even made other cis women wait until I had my turn, so no cis woman would have to be in any of the 5 other rooms." Obviously, she's meaning at the same time. So let's just examine this for what it's worth. A biological man, right, was trying on a cute bra. Why? I don't know, because if you were to see the picture of this trans person, there's nothing for the bra to cover, that I can tell at least. I'm not sure why you'd want to wear a bra, because as a woman, I can tell you that bras are not comfortable, and a woman looks forward to wearing a bra. So it's very puzzling why someone would go to all of the trouble to try to find a cute bra. But that's just me talking. Anyways, they were forced to wait by sales associates in order to, of course, protect the privacy of all the other actual women who are using the same space. And to which I say, cry me a river, right? There are so many bigger problems in this world. This does not seem like one of them that should necessarily be addressed or made all that important. Also, hats off to these sales associates, by the way, because it was only a matter of time before Victoria's Secret had to respond to this trans person on X saying this: "We're sorry to hear about your experience in our store, and we'd love to speak with you directly." And then when they were asked about the incident, Victoria's Secret told Newsweek via email, quote, "We are committed to ensuring a great experience for our customers, so we always welcome feedback. Our associates are focused on providing exceptional customer service, especially during this busy shopping season." So here's how I interpreted all of this. When I read this generic response first and foremost to the trans person on X, and then Victoria's Secret's very cut and dry corporate explanation to Newsweek, I actually felt kind of convinced that Victoria's Secret may have finally learned their lesson. Because after abandoning their foundational values and going woke several years ago, that is, of course, we've already talked about this on the show several times, when they used to use the hottest women in the world to model and advertise their lingerie, and then they turned to using body-inclusive, plus-size models, also biological men, Victoria's Secret went broke. Just looking at this year alone, in quarter three, they're down $71 million. So clearly, they're absolutely tanking. So the company has already said it's going to reverse course, get back to sexy, but now these responses tell me that they might actually mean it. I mean, the reply X to the trans person was very generic. Like any person would probably get complaining for any reason to any company online. Like, for example, if I'm going to complain to Delta Airlines for not giving me a great experience, sounds very similar to what they would tell me.
Broadcasting from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us. Join Chad in the chat right now on YouTube. If you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. Also say thanks to Tank Williams, who joins us now, former NFL safety and sports betting analyst. Time to talk some NFL. Tank, what's up, man? Hope things are well.
That's good, fellas. How's it going? Yeah, everything's good this way.
Great, man. But before we get to the NFL, are you all in on Washington?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like there are a lot of people, and Vegas especially was down in Washington. I really didn't understand the plus 9.5 spread on that game, given that Washington had been playing really good ball that improved on defense. And then also, I mean, it's easy to kind of look at statistics and things like that, but it's a different animal once you get between those white lines. These were familiar opponents. It was similar to when people thought Washington was going to get upset at Oregon State. Like, Oregon State whipped the hell out of my Stanford Cardinal. Washington saw that on tape, and so they were like, that ain't going to happen to us, and they came ready to play. Washington is seeing what Oregon was doing all the way up to that game. Then they heard, on top of that, all the chatter about Oregon just coming in. There's going to be a layup for Oregon. They heard all that chatter, and then they did what they needed to do between those white lines, and I think that will continue on in the college football playoff as well.
Take the positioning for the playoffs happening right now, the backstretch of the regular season in the NFL. NFC-wise, the battle for the top seed is going to be fun to follow. Philadelphia facing San Francisco last week. They were playing their third game in 13 days. San Francisco went into that game with 10 days rest in between games. What did you make of that matchup, the boat race final score with the 49ers going on the road and winning? And where is Dallas in this hierarchy right now for the NFC? Because we really only talk about two teams. Are there actually three?
I believe all three teams are right there. It's so easy to get caught up in the hype that's generated by social media and algorithms and things like that. So right now, the 49ers are the best thing in the world, and they're unstoppable. But was anyone saying that during that 3-game skid where they were getting their head beat in? No. I will say this, that during that 3-game stretch, they didn't have Trent Williams. They didn't have Deebo Samuel. And those guys provide the swag for the 49ers. When they come out with those two dudes leading them out of the tunnel with the boom box, they play with a different energy, different swag, and that translates between those white lines. But as you mentioned, leading into this topic, like the Philadelphia Eagles, they've had a hell of a stretch. But they had to play Kansas City, and they had another tough game there before they ended up facing the San Francisco 49ers. So it was expected to have a letdown at some point. And when you're playing against a really good team like the Niners, who have been going back and forth with them on social media and then on each other's text messages and things like that because of the relationship that some of those guys have, you knew it was going to be a physical battle. And I think they just ran out of gas. But at the same time, I feel like the Eagles are still one of the best in class. I feel like the Niners, when they have all their pieces together and they're playing with confidence and they're staying on schedule, they're one of the better teams. But let's not get it twisted. Like the Dallas Cowboys, they can be for real too. We know they can turn over teams like none other. Bland has been scoring a lot of touchdowns. He's been getting burnt lately too, but that's going to be a little bit of that give and take. We saw that with Diggs as well. But that offense with Dak Prescott, I mean, he's been on like a 6-game heater where he's been throwing close to 300 yards per game, multiple touchdowns. He's just been on fire. And so I feel like as long as the Cowboys are playing with that kind of confidence and playing complementary football on both sides of the ball, they're going to be tough to beat as well. So it just depends on which one of these teams is going to be playing their best ball when playoff time comes. But any one of these teams are capable of representing the NFC and the Super Bowl and honestly capable of winning the Super Bowl.
I feel like every time someone doubts Brock Purdy, he proves them wrong. And then we're asking a different question about him. I still find myself, Tank, asking whether or not Brock Purdy is a guy who's going to win a Super Bowl as a quarterback, even though he's been terrific as the 49ers QB. Let me ask you the question this way. If you're drafting quarterback out of the current league, and let's just look at those three top NFC teams, what order are you going? With Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy? In a fantasy quarterback draft of a guy you want to draft to win a Super Bowl, who are you picking first, second, and third?
Jalen Hurts automatically number one. What that man is able to do with his legs is just unbelievable. I mean, that just puts so much stress on opposing defenses when you have to worry about a quarterback scrambling for 40, 50, 60 yards. At the same time, he can cut you up in the pass game, and too. And that was one of the things that a lot of people were trying to throw a little shade on Jalen Hurts' game entering the league, saying that he couldn't be a consistent passer. He couldn't be accurate, but he's proven that he could throw in between the hashes. He can throw outside the hashes. Even when he banged up his shoulder last year, I remember him dropping a bomb to A.J. Brown against the Chicago Bears. I'm like, look at this dude. Like, he hurt his shoulder. He ended up missing like the next game or so after that, but he's still throwing dimes like that. So he's really taking this game up to the next level. Now, I think when it comes between Dak and Brock Purdy, it's a toss-up. I think Dak is the better, like, overall athlete. But Purdy has just really impressed me by how he's been able to protect the ball. Now, I understand he had that 3-game stretch where he had the 3 interceptions against the Cincinnati Bengals and things like that. But the reason that Kyle Shanahan likes Purdy and the way that he's so effective in that offense, because you put all these weapons around him, he knows where to go with the ball, and he just doesn't make those damn it Jimmy moments. That's what we got with Jimmy Garoppolo. There was always a moment in the game where you just say, damn it, Jimmy, because he either fumbled the ball or threw an interception in a crucial moment, and that's why the San Francisco 49ers lost the game. Brock Purdy limits those moments for the San Francisco 49ers, and that's why they're able to play consistent ball for a longer stretch than they were capable of doing with Jimmy Garoppolo.
What's Detroit missing right now that they had, but it seems like they haven't lost it, but it's teetering a bit because we're discussing three teams. I should be mentioning the Lions. They're good. Are they a team that can go on the road in the playoffs, Tank, and win in different ways right now?
They are, but Detroit needs to lean on that run game. When they have that two-headed monster going with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, they eat up clock, get in the end zone, scoring touchdowns, not kicking field goals, and then have the opposing team playing catch-up, then they can pin their ears back and let Aiden Hutchinson and that D-line go hunt and try to get sacks and get turnovers that way. But if you're playing in a back-and-forth battle, if that run game isn't going, then we've seen that secondary could be exposed. And so I think that's what we've seen over the past couple of weeks where, they're in these close games and they can't just pin their ears back. They don't have a 10-point, 14-point lead, and that allows the team to just kind of pick them apart with their running pass game. And then that defense isn't built for that. So I think they need to play the way that the Peyton Manning coach used to play, where they'll get up with a lead and then go ahead and let Dwight Freeney and Mathis come off the edge and then eat you alive. Like, that's the best formula for the Detroit Lions to have some success, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah. Kansas City has always had success in the playoffs in recent years with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. The playoffs go through Arrowhead. Do you feel like it still does this year? Because while they have their issues too offensively, they're right now the 3 seed at 8-4, trailing Miami and Baltimore. And right now, representing the AFC in Vegas, odds-wise, is Kansas City. Do you buy that?
Yeah. I don't know if the road is going to go through Arrowhead, meaning that they're going to have home field advantage. But I do still feel like they're the team that no one wants to play in the AFC, honestly, along with Miami Dolphins. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. But there's always going to be some ebbs and flows throughout the football season. We're seeing it with the Philadelphia Eagles right now. Now everyone's saying that the Eagles aren't going to do anything because the 49ers lit them up. We're saying the same thing about the Niners. We're saying that to begin the season with the Dallas Cowboys. So you see this common trend that we're having during this conversation that there's ebbs and flows. Everything moves in waves. And so I think right now with the Kansas City Chiefs, their defense was playing phenomenal ball early in the season. The offense has been trying to figure it out all along the way. They need to find some players that are going to step up. I believe Travis Kelce is going to be one of those guys. And also Rashee Rice has started to become that number one guy on the outside for him. And I think those two, along with a complementary run game with Pacheco, will help get that offense on track. Then if that defense rounds back into form, then the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be formidable and something to deal with in the playoffs like they usually are.
So you mentioned Miami. It's been a while since they won a big game against a team with a winning record. We mentioned yesterday it's middle of last season, even before that. How much weight do you put in that category when weighing where Miami is versus who they've played and who they've won against versus who has beaten the Miami Dolphins?
Not a drop.
Okay.
I don't give a damn about them not beating anyone that's good. This is the way I look at it. If you're an NFL coach, who's the last team you want the game plan for? That's the Miami Dolphins. Like, to me, Tyreek Hill is the MVP of the NFL, and there's no one that's close to being second right now because that man started off the season with 215 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 deuces on Los Angeles Chargers, and he hadn't looked back since. We can talk about a narrative where Dak, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts have had some down games. Yeah, Tyreek has had some down games as well, but his down games are still better than the average wide receiver. And when he blows up, it goes crazy between those white lines. It goes crazy on the internet. And I'm telling you, the head coach, the offense and defensive coordinator, and every damn player on that sideline, and everyone in the stands probably lose sleep over him when they're going to play against Tyreek the day before because they're trying to figure out, like, how are we going to be able to overcompensate for this big splash play that this dude is likely going to do against our defense. And so I feel like when you have that much stress when you're dealing with an opposing player, that's a guy and that's a team that no one wants to face. And I understand that they've lost some games. They haven't been able to beat any of your good opponents yet. But I feel like what they're able to do on offense and what they're rounding to on the defensive side of the ball, even though they lost Jalen Phillips, they got my man Jalen Ramsey into the fold right now, playing phenomenal ball on the back end. I think the Miami Dolphins are going to be A-OK once it comes playoff time.
If you're a Packers fan, how are you feeling about Jordan Love and his prospects of being the franchise guy now and going from Favre to Rodgers to another really good quarterback based on what you've seen recently from him?
Yeah, don't you love how the narratives change? What are we talking about? These waves, right?
Yeah.
Remember in the beginning of the season, he had some success against the Atlanta Falcons, teams like that, and they were like, okay.
It all changed on Thanksgiving, too. I felt like when everybody was watching him, they tear up the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. That's when it started to shift.
Right, that's when it shifted because he went through his little lull. I mean, even me, I was looking at him like, man, like as long as the team's playing Jordan Love, I'm playing the fantasy defense. Like this dude looked terrible, like he doesn't know where to go with the ball. They can't run the ball effectively. But it seemed like something just switched. He has some playmakers like Christian Watson, even though he's hurt now again. He was making some plays for him. The little rookie Jaden Reed has just been playing out of his mind, giving them big splash plays in a run and pass game. He's been spreading the ball around a lot and not turning the ball over. He uses his legs when he needs to in order to convert on third down and sometimes get touchdowns. And so I feel like he's playing with a lot of confidence. I believe that they've actually molded that system now to his strengths, and he has a good command of the offense and what he needs to do in order to be efficient. And when you just try to be efficient and not do too much, a lot of times that's when the big splash plays come. And I believe that's what we're starting to see a lot from this Packers offense now.
Former NFL safety Tank Williams with us on Hot Mic with Hunt and Withrow here on the OutKick Network. Tank, I'm looking at the 5, 6, and 7 seeds currently. Steelers, Colts, Browns, Texans, and Broncos, and then there's the Bills. Regardless of schedule, we have placed Josh Allen in a different category than the quarterbacks I've just listed for the teams right now, ahead of the Bills in the playoff race. Isn't this a moment that Josh Allen needs to go seize as the quarterback and as the elite tier where he was placed 2 years ago when he lost the game in overtime in Kansas City?
Absolutely, and there's opportunity to do it right now this week in Kansas City. I will say this, that I jumped the gun on Josh Allen. I remember they were playing in the playoffs against the Houston Texans way before he became like this household name, and they were throwing him right there underneath that tier of Patrick Mahomes level quarterback. And he made some just plays where I was like, yo, you cannot have your franchise quarterback making these errors this late in the playoff game and expect to win games. But then it looked like he just grinded. He noticed all the mistakes that he made that prior year, and then that's when he leveled up. What Josh Allen needs to do right now, they buried himself in a little bit of a hole. He's been turning the ball over. You know, he needs to use his legs a little bit more, be smarter with the ball, not only in the red zone, but in all areas of the field. He needs to be able to put his team on his back and ride them on to a victory. Now, we've seen Patrick Mahomes do that with a lot less. Obviously, he plays with the best tight end, arguably, to ever play the game, in Travis Kelce. But other than that, he doesn't have much on offense. I mean, they have a solid run game, but that's it. But, like, when you look at Josh Allen, I mean, he has when those two tight ends are healthy, they're pretty solid. But Kincaid has been amazing as a rookie. You got Diggs, who's one of the better wide receivers in the league out there, and you have some great complementary wide receivers as well. So I think Josh Allen needs to do a little bit of soul searching, understand that everything isn't his fault, but this is the time where people are going to lean on your leader, and you have to be able to pull your team through. And no better opportunity to get your swag back and get back on some positive momo than against the Kansas City Chiefs, another team that's been struggling in one of the premier games of this week.
Got about a minute left here, Tank. Offensive numbers down compared to 21 and 22, just recent years. Defenses have adjusted to the rules, but the rules are still set up for offenses to have success. Why are we seeing quarterback play, not just with backups, it was happening in week 1 too, really just average to below average play across the board?
You know, it's something I just really don't understand. I mean, we've seen stretches where quarterbacks have just been phenomenal. We've seen Dak in the current stretch of playing phenomenal ball, Brock Purdy. We've seen it from Jalen Hurts. But then at other times, you have guys like Kenny Pickett, whether it was all on him or the offensive coordinator, where they just can't get together, and that will probably drag the numbers down. Whatever the hell they're doing up there in New England, that's definitely dragging the numbers down as far as offensive efficiency and production. So I feel like, I mean, there's like a little bit of bifurcation where you have like the really good players who will still be able to put up some great numbers on a consistent basis, but you have these bottom dwellers that are just dragging the numbers down because there's just some awful quarterback play in the NFL right now.
Tank Williams has been our guest. Always great to have you on, Tank. We appreciate it, man, and let's do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Check him out, Tank Williams 13 on social, sports betting analyst, and much more. Always appreciate his insight here on the show. Chad, every Wednesday we'll chat with Clay Travis. We also, coming up in a little under 30 minutes, Danny Kanell will have the mic here on Hot Mic, and we also always...
You thought I was fired up about Florida State getting snubbed. Wait till you hear Danny Kanell about his Knowles.
And we also always air our top grievance of the week. I'm locked in, ready to go. I know you are as well.
I was born ready. When it comes to primary complaint, Hutton, I was born. I was born to do this job, to complain.
We get to do it once a week. It's coming up. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network. Join us to complain next.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. You know, lost in all of the, hey, man, inspire change, Whitey's bad of the NFL. There are folks in the NFL that are, well, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know, like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not frickin' talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction. And that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at an all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. It's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Like, why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We, as the rest of us don't have that same grace. And veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? You think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Huntley Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, I love a good troll job with, especially college sports.
Yeah.
As long as it's all fair game. Pat McAfee trolling Georgia at the SEC championship game on College Game Day, picking Alabama after getting all the fans to chant along with him was awesome. It was also almost too WWE in a way. And my big takeaway with the quote as to why he's trolling Georgia fans, he's picking Alabama because they are angry with him, Georgia fans angry with him for replacing David Pollock. The quote was, it was a nice little reminder that, hey, yeah, you can go to hell too for what you said to me all year. I see this and I think, man, he's really bothered by the fact that he's not liked on game day compared to other programs.
Yeah,
that's my takeaway.
Well, if you remember,
he's responded to it all year.
Yeah, and I can't tell with him. Like Kirk Herbstreit legitimately gets upset about any criticism of him, and he goes off on people constantly on social media that says he favors one team over another or gets something wrong or whatever. He takes it personally when someone does that. With McAfee, I can't tell if he's legitimately angry about it or he's just really good at selling the play in WWE type style.
But that's why I think he's not he hasn't been accepted on game day from the fan base.
Yeah, well, I feel remember the Athletic did that poll and they asked readers if they liked him or didn't like him or didn't care. And remember, it was like 70% of people didn't like Pat McAfee or what. And he reposted that and said something like, I don't know a single solitary soul that reads The Athletic. So I have no idea who these people are that hate me. I can't tell if that's him being legitimately bothered by it or if he was legitimately bothered by it, would he repost it and say that?
But he also
and
said,
like,
I don't have to do game day, like moving forward. That was another thing that he put out there. I think he is legitimately bothered by it because he's more polarizing on that show than other shows.
Well, and it's
the fact that you don't know how to answer that, Chad, as to why he's polarizing with the viewers, the audience.
It's a totally different world in that people that go to his show, especially when they were seeking it out on YouTube, they know him, they like him.
You know what you're getting.
So you're getting almost universal praise, that people love you because they found you and they like your personality and all of that, right? They're like-minded people watching. I'm sure that's the same for whatever his ESPN ratings are on that show now that his show is linear as well as on digital. College Game Day is a bigger audience for a show like that exposes you to different age groups, demographics, everything. Some of them aren't going to like you. Maybe he does take it overly personal when people go after him in his work on College Game Day. I think he's good. I think it's the sort of energy that the show needed. I mean, if I'm ranking College Game Day host, he's certainly not dead last. That's Desmond Howard to me. And it's been worse since the whole Michigan scandal where he seems almost sedated week after week since that happened. So I don't think McAfee's an issue for the show. I don't see them wanting to move on from him given the investment into Pat McAfee with his daily show and him on College Game Day with ESPN. So does it bother him? I don't. It's a good point, maybe.
Well,
or maybe he's just being a pro wrestler the way he is and playing the whole feud up.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if you have to be the heel. You don't have to play a role on that show, right? And I think it's kind of it's just obvious it's more forced than not.
Yeah, every open of the show,
as a role,
they go to him to get the crowd chanting.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah, they open. They have the written out open from Reese Davis. Then they throw it to McAfee to turn to the crowd and get them chanting something, and he's just cutting a promo and gets the crowd to go along with him. It's always very good and very energetic and a good way to start the day. I'm fine with that role. I'm fine with it being mainly entertainment when it comes to Pat McAfee. You're going to get the hard-hitting analysis from Kirk Herbstreit, who I also think is terrific. Lee Corso is what Lee Corso is right now, but he's an institution in college football, much like Dick Vitale in college basketball, regardless of what you think about his ability as a color commentator right now. That's Lee Corso in that seat for College Game Day, which is, again, why, going back to our initial conversation, I would love to see Nick Saban on a show like that, talking about every game every week.
Maybe this is way too old school. I just want that show to have more voices that I care about hearing from when there's news, instead of entertainment and playing a character. You know, like cranking who McAfee is up to 11 instead of walking around. Normally he's at a 6. If we're just he's himself, but it's exaggerated. And I mean I don't go to Game Day to hear from Desmond Howard on what he thinks about certain issues, right? Like I want more of what Herbstreit's bringing to that show, specifically to that show. If I want McAfee's show, I know where to find it.
Yeah,
and I hope that makes sense. Like
it's
to
a
me,
good point.
That's the polarizing aspect of it.
That's Nick Saban.
Sure,
Nick Saban is the type of guy that every time he speaks about an issue in college football, if he does so as not the head coach of Alabama,
yes, right,
and a freelance, I can talk about every team now and whatever I want to say, it's newsworthy.
Yeah,
whatever he has to say about anything, it's going to be well thought out and it's going to be newsworthy. So if you want that, you need someone with that gravitas. And there's not many people in sports that have that.
You're right.
So I don't know who you replace. Eventually, Lee Corso is going to have to be replaced. I don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah, and Barkley's the best of both worlds there.
Yeah.
The entertainment.
He can be the WWE type personality and also someone that you want to hear what he has to say about something.
Yeah. The OutKick store playing on a new field. That's right. The new OutKick store just launched. And to celebrate, we're offering a buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more when you visit shop.outkick.com. Score 50% off. All you have to do is visit shop.outkick.com and add the items to your cart. The discount will be automatically applied. You won't be complaining about that discounts, but on Wednesdays you can complain as we air our top grievance of the week.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mike's primary complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week, the idea that we need statements released from quarterbacks or any player entering the portal, especially those that have been at a university for about a year, if that, thanking the program and the coaches and your teammates and the fans. No one cares after 1 year if you're bouncing to go play for a different coach and a different program, that it actually meant something to you where you were after 2 semesters and your first season starting, if that. The lengthy statements aren't needed. And honestly, it's not something that is warranted, given the fact that you're probably going to try to leave wherever you're going. You'll be thinking that fan base too. That's my primary complaint.
My primary complaint is when you have the perfect response in a group text setting and you think, okay, this is exactly what needs to be said right now. Maybe it's a little bit clever. Maybe it's funny. Maybe it's just what I want to say to everyone in the group. but your text doesn't go through in time, and someone else nabs it from you. And then it comes through after the fact, and you look like a moron because you're saying the exact same thing someone else said, but you didn't realize the text didn't go through immediately at first because of whatever cell zone you were in at the time. It feels like I've been robbed anytime that either it's slow to go through or I'm the second person to say the obvious joke after something comes in on the text chain, and it looks like I'm just repeating the person in front of me. Man, that gets to me every time, and it's my primary complaint.
Guys, I already know I'm going to get some backlash for my primary complaint, but it's people trying to sell me on the Army-Navy game. I get it's a tradition. I get that there's a lot of pageantry that goes around it, but if you're selling me on the game, man, come on. We got 2 5-6 teams. Somebody's going to talk about how they're going to be running the triple option. Spoiler alert, they stopped doing that this season. Also, if we look at it from the standpoint of, I get it's the only thing on, but the total's at 27.5. It's just like you're trying to sell me on watching the Patriots play the Steelers on Thursday night. It's not going to be fun. I'll sit through it because I'm a degenerate, and I'm going to bet the under this time. But I get frustrated with people saying, like, this is a great game whenever the game itself is not. And that's my primary complaint.
Yeah, look. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? I get if you don't want to see low-scoring, run every single play football, that's going to be a lot of punts and not a lot of passes going deep in the air, then you're not going to like this game.
The storylines within the individual players are great.
Yeah, it's one of those that I like to watch the 2 hours leading up to it at times more than the game itself. Like, I'll watch the game. It'll be on the background. I'm not going to sit here and say I watch every second of every Army-Navy game and love every second of it. But I do love the build-up to it. I love the march on with the cadets and the midshipmen. I like the backstories of some of the players, the human interest stuff leading up to the game. All that stuff I love. And I like that we still have something old-timey in America. And this feels very old-timey every year, that game gets its own Saturday.
It feels
right?
like...
Isn't it cool that they wait and then play this the week after championship week?
Do you think it's just so people will watch?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also to honor our military, Davey.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part is we want to celebrate the men and women that protected service, right?
From year to year, they'll go on to a bowl game. But this is, in effect, their championship. You know, and also it is a bucket list game to attend.
It is very cool.
If you have not been. The march on, the idea is you've got the cadets who are marching on, and you know that they're signing up to serve our country, and then the players the same way. That is something to go and watch and take in. It is incredible. It was a great experience in the snow whenever Chad and I had the chance to do it in Philly.
Yeah, my cousin David just graduated from West Point, and he's been able to go to the game as a cadet, and he's now training to be an Army Ranger. And he could have gone to almost any academic institution he wanted, but he signed up to go to West Point, and now he wants to go be a Ranger. That's not something I necessarily would have signed up to do, and more power to him. I give him credit for wanting to do that and getting that education. And having been there, I was at one in Washington, D.C., where they played in Landover, Maryland, but the lead up to it was in D.C. We were at the one in Philly, where it started snowing right before kickoff, which was neat
it was
to
great.
watch. The amount of dignitaries that are at that game and money, like big level stuff that I'm never around, the power circles of Washington, D.C., that will attend the Army-Navy game that have ties to either the Naval Academy or West Point, that's pretty impressive to witness also.
And it's just is it a great game? Not every year. Is it worth watching the finish? Yes. If it's close, absolutely. And I also liked watching the triple option. It was my one day a year where I'm buying into it. And you're either, like, if you don't have one side or the other, you base it on your family tree, right? At some point, someone served in the military.
Or whoever you have money on.
Yeah, well, that too. But yeah, I'm normally Navy because my grandfather was in the Navy. Same as Chad, I believe.
Yeah.
So
my dad was in the Navy.
Okay. Oh, that's.
I grew up rooting for Navy every year. Also, the only time I remotely thought about changing was when my cousin was actually attending. West Point. He was there at the game, but no, I'm Navy through and through.
And if you hate the portal and every NIL and everything else, like it's a throwback that has always happened But it feels like if you want college football to be what it was, that's the closest thing you're ever going to get.
I just want
for the
more.
players involved.
I mean, I totally get people don't want to watch, option football or a bunch of punts or a 13-10 game if that's what ends up being. That's fine. Aesthetically, it's in the eye of the beholder. I just think we need more things that are throwback.
Yeah.
That's an institution, and we don't have. I feel like we lose a lot of that every year in America, and this is one that, regardless if I'm going to watch every second of the game, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I watch every second of every Army-Navy game, but I do record the build-up to it and watch all that stuff, even if I'm fast-forwarding through commercials. I'm watching it. I like that we still have it. I like that it happens on its own Saturday.
I just looked up Ken Niumatalolo to see what he was doing. He's the director of leadership at UCLA, according to Google.
Maybe he's going to take over for Chip Kelly. He'll be the director of football once Chip Kelly gets fired midway through next season.
Coming up, Danny Kanell joins us. We'll give him the floor, and he discusses how upset he is that Florida State was left out of the college football playoff. That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement, and today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here for the Wednesday edition. Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. If you're streaming the show live, we say thank you. Same goes if you're listening to this great radio partner. We've got Clay Travis coming up in 20 minutes. But Chad, starting on Monday, we were mentioning our next guest and what he must be feeling. Same for the Seminole fan base, and college football fans certainly echoed a lot of this sentiment. Danny Kanell joins us courtesy of Bet Online. You can check out betonline.net for updated college football playoff, conference, Heisman, and bowl game lines. Danny, thank you for the time, man. Hope things are okay.
Jonathan, what's going on? Chad, great to be on with you guys. You kind of go through those, 5 stages of grief, whatever they are. I don't know what phase I'm in. There was anger early right away.
Is it acceptance yet?
No. I don't know if I'll ever get acceptance. I mean, to be thought I was doing better. I thought time would heal these wounds. And then, I see all the talking heads kind of justifying it on Monday and Tuesday, and I got fired up. And then I actually was on the golf course, and I was playing with Greg Anthony, who I work with. He does stuff at Sirius, and so we play golf the same course. And I was actually even par through about 5 holes, playing pretty good. He comes up and joins our group, and he goes, sorry about your nose. And I was like, yeah. I was like, we got screwed. And he's like, no, you didn't. I was like, here we go.
Yeah.
And then it was like, he was of the camp, like it would have been a bad game. And so I think it's just going to be a debate that rages on. Florida State fans may never get over it. I know the players won't. I know they'll meet up in 25, 50-year reunions down the road and say we got screwed. It's just the unfortunate reality of the playoff that we're in.
Saturday night, did you have a feeling that this would happen, that Florida State would not get in after Bama beat Georgia? Or did you think that the committee would do it based on the conference champion that was unbeaten?
So Bama won. We knew that happened. And I was like, oh boy, here's the scenario that everybody had proposing. And instantly I was like, uh-oh, this could be a problem. This could be problematic for Florida State. But then, you're kind of hopeful, thinking, man, Louisville, if we put up a good performance, we could possibly, I think then, like if we do what Ohio State did, right, back in 2014 in the Big Ten championship game, they had third-string quarterback Cardale Jones. They won 59-0. So I'm like, well, we're not going to get 59-0. That just wasn't reasonable. But, man, if we just win by even just look good, and it looked awful. Like, and then as the game is unfolding, I'm watching this, and I was working up in New York City with CBS Sports, and I was in studio. I'm like, this is not, they're going to watch this, and the powers that be, the committee, they are not going to want to see this I mean, it was gross. It was awful. You couldn't explain it any other way. And that's all we were consumed by, because we needed that eye test pass. And you had already heard the conversation throughout the day and throughout the week leading up that, man, Florida State didn't look great against Florida, even though I thought we looked better. But then without Tate Rodemaker, it's like, oh, man, what are we going to do? So to answer your question, yeah, I was worried about it. And then at the same time, so then they won and they covered. And I also watched Michigan. And Michigan against Iowa, they didn't look great. They didn't look any better offensively, but they had their starter. And so we're okay with that. But when I was doing the live reaction, we were on air. And as they revealed Texas at 3, I was like, we're screwed. I just felt like if Florida State was in, they would have kept the 3 undefeateds at the top, backed in Texas or Alabama. But as it turns out, the committee was more putting up Bama against Florida State, the resumes, the eye test, and Bama just beat, the number 1 team in the country, and Florida State didn't look great against Louisville, who just lost to Kentucky. So kind of saw it coming.
Just in theory, Danny, my biggest issue with this whole thing, and take the teams out of it, everything else, just on its face. And I know there's bylaws and contingencies that allow them to do this. I don't want a committee to project and tell me what they think is going to happen. I want the committee to look at all 13 games for every team, or 12 games, and tell me what's happened. Tell me the 4 best teams based on those resumes. And don't get into this. And we heard the anonymous committee member tell Heather Dinich, we just sat there and watched the first half of Louisville, Florida State, and they couldn't get first downs offensively. And we said, this isn't going to look good in a playoff. And that really bothers me.
Do we think they can win a national title? And we thought no.
That really bothers me, because I don't, and I know it's in there, and people are going to say it's in the bylaws. I don't care. I want it out of the bylaws. I hate the projection part of this. Does that bother you?
Oh, are you kidding me? Like, that's a slam dunk question, Chad. Of course it does. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was an easy cop out for them to say we don't think there could win. But I mean, there's a laundry list of examples that you could prove that you don't have to be great offensively to win a championship, right? I mean, I kept going back to and I think I actually put this out there during the ACC championship game because I think it was 3-0, 3-3. It was gross. And I'm thinking, oh, this reminds me of the 9-6 Alabama LSU. Remember that game, which everybody loved? Oh, look at this defense. Look at this defense on display. And there was a lot of NFL talent on the field, but you also had Jordan Jefferson at quarterback or Jarrett Lee. I don't remember who it was for LSU. And their offense was atrocious. And you had an Alabama offense that was sputtering around, and they weren't innovative like they are now. They were trying to run it into this brick wall, and the game was disgusting. I didn't hear one person complain about that game or eye test, and, didn't bother anybody. The Baltimore Ravens, when they won the Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer, that offense wasn't pretty, but the defense was incredible. There's always been, that's one of the things that makes, football specifically great, is that you've got, different styles and you've got different ways to win. And the greatest team sport that we know, 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense, they told you one player made that much difference, which I get it. It does make a huge difference. But you cannot penalize a team that did not lose and for winning ugly. Like I've always told coaches, this is during the regular season. And I would have said this after Alabama beat Auburn. Don't ever apologize for an ugly win. Like you should never have to apologize for an ugly win. And that's what Florida State felt like they had to do. And the committee said, yeah, it was ugly. It was a win. It felt like a loss. And they essentially viewed it as a loss that impacted Florida State, forever. Chad, I'll take it a step further. Like, I don't want the committee to have to project. How about we just get rid of any committee? Get rid of any computers. Let's just play it out on the field. And until we get that, because I know a lot of people are saying, well, we're going to 12. It'll solve the problem. It's not going to solve the problem. There's still going to be a committee that's going to select half the field based on eye test, all the metrics that we talk about, quarterbacks getting hurt. There might be a school that's at the 12 spot, 12 line. They lose their quarterback. It could happen again. Until we get to a place where we know what you need to win, you win, you're in, and then it's a true playoff. I think every fan should look at it with some skepticism and say, this isn't really a playoff. This is an invitational.
Yeah, you nailed it. Then there's going to be the debate about 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. But it's better to have that, just like it's better to have in the NCAA tournament the debate between 68, 69, 70 than 4, 5, and 6 going into a tournament, right?
There is a unique aspect, too, though, where the 1, 2, 3, 4 will get a bye. So Florida State, if they were in 5, they still would have had to play they would have had to play earlier. They would have not had a bye. And if it was the back end, maybe they drop them. Because, it was a total sham. Like, if you think Florida State's bad, don't put them at 5 ahead of Georgia. They're a 14-point underdog versus Georgia. Why do you still have them at 5? I thought they were awful. I thought they can't win a championship. Like, they can't beat Georgia if they can't win a championship. So there's just so many things that were just so problematic. But again, like, that won't change either, because there's a huge advantage to being 1, 2, 3, 4. You get the bye. There's an advantage to being 5, 6, 7, 8. You get the home game. So there's still going to be this committee of people that are going to determine the true fate of college football. And I hate that. And I think it makes fans leery and distrustful, which I think this is the perfect reason why.
Let's get into the ESPN conspiracy theory time here. The ESPN is the puppeteer of what they want, right?
Yeah.
Do you think it was more ESPN for ratings and interest and everything else badly wanted Texas and Alabama in, and to get Alabama in, they needed to put Texas at 3 as a one-loss college conference champion, and then Bama behind them because they head-to-head, and that's what they did. Do you think it was more that, or more ESPN saying, we just don't want Florida State because they have a backup quarterback? Was it more the desire for Alabama and Texas, or the anti-desire to have Florida State play in the playoff?
I wish I could say, look, I was laid off by ESPN. There's a lot of thoughts I have about my time there. I liked all the people I worked with. I would love to say, like, the executives devised this plan to, manipulate and pull the strings. I'm not going to go that far, but it was very clear. And there was one person who was really pounding the table the most, and it was Kirk Herbstreit. And what Kirk Herbstreit says at ESPN, that holds more weight than anybody, maybe more than Bob Iger, who's in charge of Disney. Like, as far as college football goes, what Kirk Herbstreit says is gospel. And when he started, he was one of the first ones. Him and Desmond Howard were on game day before, like right around when Jordan Travis got hurt. It was the next day or maybe even before then. And they floated the possibility that they didn't think an undefeated Florida State could get in. That was the minute I was like, uh-oh. And then the week leading into championship weekend, you had Herbstreit on Pardon My Take saying, I don't care about doing the right thing. I mean, those are his words. He said, I don't care about doing the right thing. We're supposed to get the 4 best teams. And he really was pounding home the 4 best teams. And I think a lot of people on the committee pay attention to that. I think other analysts at ESPN pay attention to what Herbstreit says. And I thought that absolutely swayed opinion of the analyst and eventually, ultimately, probably the committee too. They're listening. And if I'm Kirk Herbstreit, I'm probably thinking the same thing. Like, I had to sit through TCU, Georgia last year. This game could be ugly, even though there's no guarantee. He didn't want to sit through that. So I think it's just, there was definitely a narrative from the majority of the people that worked on air. And I'll say this, it wasn't only ESPN. There were a lot of Fox people too, who were saying, nah, you don't want Florida State in there. That's going to be ugly. That's going to look gross if they get blown out. It's bad for college football. It's bad for all of us. Where's our enjoyment? And that's kind of where it went to. Like, I understand it. I don't think it's right. Like, I would say you have to do the right thing. As a former player, Herbstreit's the son of a coach. A lot of those guys that are up there are former players. You should do as much as you can protect the integrity of the game. And I thought that was completely blown up by saying, who cares about doing the right thing? Yeah, they won all their games, but we need a good product ultimately for the Final Four. I thought that's where the powers, the influential players, the gatekeepers of the sport, I thought they failed college football fans by doing that.
Danny Kanell joins us courtesy of betonline.net. What is the sentiment now of Florida State and the ACC and the impact that the conference would have played in just the resume head-to-head for Alabama?
So, we already know Florida State's been very clear about wanting to get out of the ACC, right? I mean, is there any more of a reason than this? Then they need to go back to and basically their board of regents felt the same way. Like, they're all looking at the economics, the finances. They're saying, yeah, this isn't going to last over the long term. I think the last time I was on here, we talked about it.
Yep.
Well, now they can just go with like another hammer. It just feels like everything is pointing towards Florida State's exit from the ACC, which I do feel bad for Jim Phillips because he's in a no-win situation. But I think even Florida State fans are like, this is ridiculous. Like, we got to get out. And I do wonder if this sparks change earlier. Like, I think this offseason was already going to be one filled with a lot of speculation, but I think there's going to be more of an effort for Florida State to try to exit. But I do wonder if, because it was, the playoff is owned by ESPN and the SEC is owned by ESPN. Excuse me, the college football playoff is its own entity, but the SEC and the push to get the SEC and Saban is on there. I do wonder, and this is no insider information, if this makes Florida State more likely to say, man, you guys kind of screwed us. And, hey, Big Ten, what do you guys think? That's just rough speculation. I think either one, you guys know this. We've talked about this before. I think the SEC is a better fit, fan-wise, regional rivalries that are already there, kind of in place. But I just wonder if you're looking at this saying, just with a bad taste in your mouth about, Florida State. I will say this too. I do think, and I have felt this from a lot of fan bases, but Florida State, I've joked about FSU Twitter as a thing. They've been really bad, Kirk Herbstreit, over the years. They've been really bad to a lot of those guys in the set. You know what makes it a lot easier to do when you don't like a fan base? To say, yeah, let's leave them out. And Feinbaum said, hey, everybody already doesn't like Florida State. And he was more alluding to the fact that they had, tried to push their way out of the ACC and they've made it public and people didn't like that, which I totally disagree with. Like, would have been better for them in the dark of the night just to bounce the way Oklahoma and Texas did. Like, we're all okay with that. But Florida State goes public with it, and all of a sudden they're enemy number one of college football. But I do think there might have been some truth to that Boo Corrigan's the head of the committee. He's at NC State. They're not exactly one of the schools that's going to benefit from whatever decision Florida State makes. So maybe he wasn't as likely to pound the table and go to bat for Florida State. So I do think there's some of that, and that goes back to the personalities and the people, the human aspect of the committee, which you can look at. And I think it's worth asking that question. Like, was there some personal animosity towards Florida State because of either way their fan base treated you or because of their, public profession that they want out and they deserve better than the ACC?
Certainly know there's animosity for the college football playoff selection committee, no doubt.
And what's crazy, and this is not just Florida State's fan base. I'm sure every fan base has looked up. I'm sure they've been grilling the committee with DMs and messages on social media. Like, and every fan base would do it. I have implored Florida State's fans to be like, hey, don't be so nasty. Like, it doesn't do us any good. I get passionate. Like, sending death threats and calling people's children ugly, like, that's not doing anybody any good. But every fan base has idiots, including ours.
Danny Kanell joined us courtesy of betonline.net. Danny, always great to catch up with you, man. Thank you for the perspective
really good stuff.
here.
Thank you, Danny.
Let's catch up soon.
Jonathan, appreciate it, Chad. Great catching up. We'll see you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
man.
buddy. Appreciate it.
One of the best right there.
Makes a lot of good points.
Yeah. And and does so in an area where the sentiment is going to be the best games are currently scheduled. But I love the tie-in with ESPN. I love the tie-in with the ACC.
Interesting what he had to say just about human nature. That naturally, if you're getting crushed on social media by a specific fan base, you're probably not going to like that team, that fan base, and not want them to do well just naturally. So that's an interesting part of that. And his thoughts on Herbstreit being one of the leaders, the thought leaders of college football, makes a lot of sense.
Clay Travis joins us next on Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Victoria's Secret used to be sexy. On that note, let's talk about Victoria's Secret because we continually talk about saving women's spaces, their sports leagues, their locker rooms, but we've never actually talked about their dressing rooms in retail stores. Well, now we also are getting the opportunity to talk about that one because the other day, according to an article by Newsweek, a trans woman started complaining on social media that Victoria's Secret mistreated them because they wanted to use a dressing room in one of their stores. So the trans person tweeted out this, quote, "I was trying to find a cute bra at Victoria's Secret, and they made me wait until every cis woman left the dressing rooms before I could go into one of them. They even made other cis women wait until I had my turn, so no cis woman would have to be in any of the 5 other rooms." Obviously, she's meeting at the same time. So let's just examine this for what it's worth. A biological man, right, was trying on a cute bra. Why? I don't know, because if you were to see the picture of this trans person, there's nothing for the bra to cover, that I can tell at least. I'm not sure why you'd want to wear a bra because as a woman, I can tell you that bras are not comfortable and a woman looks forward to wearing a bra. So it's very puzzling why someone would go to all of the trouble to try to find a cute bra. But that's just me talking. Anyways, they were forced to wait by sales associates in order to, of course, protect the privacy of all the other actual women who are using the same space. And to which I say, cry me a river, right? There are so many bigger problems in this world. This does not seem like one of them that should necessarily be addressed or made all that important. Also, hats off to these sales associates, by the way, because it was only a matter of time before Victoria's Secret had to respond to this trans person on X saying this: "We're sorry to hear about your experience in our store, and we'd love to speak with you directly." And then when they were asked about the incident, Victoria's Secret told Newsweek via email, quote, "We are committed to ensuring a great experience for our customers, so we always welcome feedback. Our associates are focused on providing exceptional customer service, especially during this busy shopping season." So here's how I interpreted all of this. When I read this generic response, first and foremost, to the trans person on X, and then Victoria's Secret's very cut and dry corporate explanation to Newsweek, I actually felt kind of convinced that Victoria's Secret may have finally learned their lesson. Because after abandoning their foundational values and going woke several years ago, that is, of course, we've already talked about this on the show several times, when they used to use the hottest women in the world to model and advertise their lingerie, and then they turned to using body-inclusive, plus-size models, also biological men, Victoria's Secret went broke. Just looking at this year alone, in quarter 3, they're down $71 million. So clearly, they're absolutely tanking. So the company has already said it's going to reverse course, get back to sexy, but now these responses tell me that they might actually mean it. I mean, the reply on X to the trans person was very generic. Like any person would probably get complaining for any reason to any company online. Like, for example, if I'm going to complain to Delta Airlines for not giving me a great experience, sounds very similar to what they would tell me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. And speaking of OutKick, you can head over to shop.outkick.com and you can check out the new OutKick store. Just launched, and to celebrate, we're offering a buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more. Visit shop.outkick.com and score 50% off. All you got to do, shop.outkick.com, add items to the cart. The discount is automatically applied. Chad, what do you have over here? Mail?
Hutton, way back in the day, Clay Travis, our next guest, was on a local Nashville radio station. We worked for the same station.
Yep.
There was a segment called Hate Mail with Hutton.
Yes.
Where you would read emails, social media complaints about Clay Travis. Terrific segment. Always loved it. We need a new segment called Fan Mail sent to Sixth and Peabody, Old Smoky and Yeehaw for Clay that I get to open. So, Clay, this is the second time that someone has sent mail here for you. This is from an address in Ohio, clearly personally stamped. It looks like fan mail. I asked this to you before. I'll ask again. May I open this for you? The last time it was a book sent by someone for you. It's still here. Are you okay with me opening this during a commercial break at some point?
Yeah, and I'm actually interested to see what's being sent.
I mean, I can do it during the show too if you'd like.
Yeah, you can open it. You can open it during the show during one of these questions and inform us. But Hutton, we should bring that back. Hate mail with Hutton back in the day. That's a great idea.
Let's do it.
Whatever people would complain when we did local sports talk radio, you would read it as if it were like the voice of God.
If it were in all caps, I would scream it to you.
Yes, we need to bring that back. The problem is, maybe you guys need to go into my mentions. I don't read them very much anymore, or email, whatever. I'm America's sweetheart all of a sudden. Like 99%. I mean, you guys see me out and about. Everybody's so nice.
Your approval rating has never been higher.
It's amazing. It's not all of a sudden though. I've been, years ago. We're in Hoover, Alabama. You're hated by Bama fans, but you're signing autographs with them and posing for photos with babies.
Well, yeah, and it's because all this stuff online is mostly BS.
Right.
I think. But and there's relatively few people out there who really get that worked up in general. But now I'm probably jinxing myself. You probably just open a letter laced with arsenic and are going to die, which would be a tough twist for this segment to go from how beloved I am to Withrow being taken out in a hazmat suit.
I can't confirm, Clay. No arsenic, no anthrax in here. It's a love letter from someone.
Yeah.
It's from a speaker and Christian comedian that is pushing their book or their latest work or wants you to talk about it. So I'll get you the details of this gentleman.
We should get this to you.
But speaking of Love Fest, who would have expected a Love Fest between you and Stephen A. Smith? That seemingly has happened twice now, where it seems, Clay, after your latest conversation with Stephen A., you guys probably agree on a lot more than you disagree on.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think most American sports fans agree on way more than they disagree on. And I'm not talking about somebody can be a fan of the Giants and somebody else can be a fan of the Cowboys or the 49ers or the woebegone, Tennessee Titans. I'm not talking about agree on who you root for from a fan base perspective. But I think there's a desperate demand for sanity in America in all facets of life. I thought Riley Gaines' testimony yesterday on Capitol Hill was just phenomenal. She's so good at what she does and so fearless in advocating for something that is so much common sense. But I think that what you're seeing is, and I give credit to Stephen A. I did his podcast. I don't know. It's probably been 4 or 5 months ago. And as part of that, we said, hey, we'll do a home and home. He said, I'll come on your show. And so he interviewed me and then I interview him. And there's obviously points of agreement and points of disagreement. But I think similar to our last conversation, people seem to respond to it very well. And I think the vast majority of the American public wants more people from different backgrounds and different experiences and perspectives to talk more as opposed to talking less. That seems to me to be something that is sought after to a substantial degree.
Hey, he's next in line, so automatically in my mind, he's getting that bump in pay. Where would you place Stephen A's value, Clay, to ESPN compared to recent hires that they've made?
I think he's probably, again, so let me take a step back. There's all different sorts of ways to assess value, right? So what is Troy Aikman and Joe Buck worth to ESPN for Monday Night Football? Well, a lot, because 20 million people might watch Monday Night Football. What is Kirk Herbstreit worth to ABC and ESPN because of what he does at College Game Day and for what he does in terms of the viewership for the college football playoff, college football all year? Obviously, he's also doing Thursday Night Football with Al Michaels. My point on that is there are different ways to assess value because everybody has a different job. In terms of someone who appears on a daily basis on ESPN programming, I think Stephen A. Smith is the most valuable talent at ESPN. You're getting a great deal of tonnage. I think First Take is 3 hours every day, if I'm not mistaken. That is a major quality of performance. I mean, you guys do 15 hours a week. I do 15 hours a week of radio. I do OutKick. I think there's a lot of tonnage. So I would put Stephen A. Smith number one in the terms of value, in that I think First Take without him would drop off tremendously. And I think it would be hard to do a show anywhere near the success level that they do it now. I would put, at Fox, I'm a big believer in tonnage, by which I mean the amount of content that you put out on a daily basis. Colin Cowherd, to me, probably the most valuable on-air talent for FS1 because he's giving 3 hours of solo radio show every day. Skip Bayless, I would say, is the second most valuable because that show they built around Skip. So I think probably the three most valuable talents on daily sports television programming, and you could debate who is, where you would rank them. But I think you would say Cowherd, Bayless, and Stephen A. Smith would be the three most valuable. And then there are other guys who do less hours, right? Like Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser would be extremely valuable on a daily basis with PTI. There are other people who do less lengthy shows, but I always say the value of doing 15 hours, not that many people can do it, and even fewer can do it very well. So that's kind of how I would assess it.
Clay Travis with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. So I know you're pleased with what the committee did. Is Georgia not one of the four best teams in America right now, though?
No, they are. And I think this goes to the inherent conflict and difficulty that the College Football Playoff Committee has. There are two primary ways to value teams: best and most deserving. And the reality of what the committee does is they don't take the best and they don't take the most deserving. They somehow come up with a mix between the two. So I think the four best teams in college football, in no particular order, are Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. I think those are the four best teams, but those aren't the four most deserving teams. So Washington, for instance, and Texas do deserve, in my opinion, to be in the playoff, but they're not the four best. They're not two of the four best. If you were just doing the best, you wouldn't even really look at results because sometimes the best team might lose a couple of games. Texas is in because I think they have the best single win all season. Winning by 10 on the road at Alabama is, I think, the best single win of the college football season. Second best, I think, is probably Alabama over Georgia. That's why Alabama is in. Third best is probably Michigan over Ohio State. That's why Michigan is in. That's why Ohio State is out. And then you probably fourth best is a dual win. Washington beating Oregon twice is probably the fourth and fifth best wins. So you reward the teams that win the biggest games. You don't just go strictly by Vegas odds. But if you told me right now, and I made this argument on Saturday night, Alabama or Florida State, who would Michigan rather play? I think every single Michigan coach, player, and fan would pick Florida State. Now, they would have picked TCU last year. So sometimes you pick a team and you still end up losing to them. But I think Georgia, to your point, Hutton, they're a 14-point favorite over this Florida State team. If Georgia, you never know who's going to opt out, who's going to play. That's the complexity of bowl season when you're not in the playoff. But Georgia probably is the best team in college football. I would have had the exact same first four, but I would have had Georgia 5. I would have had Ohio State 6, and I actually would have bumped Florida State all the way down to 7.
Clay, there is a whopper of a post and a story right now at OutKick. I'm just going to read the post to you and get your response right now. That I've stumbled upon this before you joined us here today. Gen Z men love betting on sports and don't care about having sex or marrying, which could be very bad news for the housing market starting next year. This from a Wall Street vet. Quote, 30% of young men said they haven't had sex in over a year and don't seem to care. Clay, your thoughts on the correlation of sports betting, young men not having sex, not marrying, and the housing market crisis that apparently is coming in the next year?
Well, so one, let me dive into this. I just talked about it. I never thought I was going to see Kim Jong-un, North Korea's dictator, say something and me be like, you know what? He's got a really important point here, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. That just happened this week. Me and Kim Jong-un, not usually on the same page. I'm a Korean evil dictator, and I don't oftentimes, I think to myself, wow, our brains are completely aligned here. We got a major issue with population. I think I was talking about this with you and Hutton last night.
Yeah.
I tell my boys now, 15, 13, and 9, and they probably think that, Dad's crazy for saying this. I'm drilling into them, you guys need to have as many kids as possible, because I'm not concerned about the climate. I'm not concerned about like the polar ice caps melting. That's not my thing. I'm concerned that the population in the world is going to collapse because many couples are choosing not to have kids. And so that ties in. If 30% of men are not having sex, in a year, that ain't good, right? So, they're probably sitting around playing video games instead and gambling. And I think this goes to larger societal trends. When I was in high school or college, you wanted to get out and be physically present with members of the opposite sex. In fact, you would do whatever you could to scheme to be in the presence of as many pretty girls as you possibly could when you were 15, 16, 17 years old and on into your 20s and 30s and beyond, right?
Yes.
Kids today don't really meet up. Like, they're not trying to get their driver's license like we all were. They mostly interact via their phones, and they don't have the same social interaction of boy-girl dynamic that we did. I asked my 15-year-old recently if he wanted to take some girl that he's talking to go get a pizza in the neighborhood, and he looked at me like I asked him if he wanted to go to Mars. Like, it was a crazy – he was like, no, we're Snapchatting and FaceTiming, Dad. We don't need to go out in person and get pizza. I was like, I don't even understand. Like this, I know everybody complains about the newest generation, but when I was 15 or 16, I would want to be, if I could, not that I had a lot of options. Let's be honest, but I would want to be out with as many pretty girls as I could.
You get dropped off at the movie theater to go hang out with girls, right? Even before you're driving or whatever it was that you did on Friday night.
You go to the mall. You spend a ton of time planning and plotting to be around as many pretty girls as you could. And it's like they're not even trying to do it. And it's not just boys, by the way. It's girls, too. I don't understand it. But the world's going to collapse.
Well, thank God for that trend, by the way. With 2 daughters, I'm all for that one.
Nobody will have kids. Kim Jong-un, he's 100% right. I disagree with him on wanting to blow the world up and get nuclear weapons, but he's 100% right. People need to have more kids, including my own boys, who I'm arguing to have as many kids as they can. And if you're listening to me right now, go have babies. Hopefully with a married couple.
I can hear it now.
I don't
Someone
want you
clipping.
to go full Travis Henry and have 7 kids by 7 different women. But I want you to get married and have as many kids, be fruitful and multiply as much as you can.
Clay is for married children and not Antonio Cromartie, not remembering the name of his kids.
11. I don't want 11 illegitimate kids. Although, if you can afford them, I would prefer that over 0 kids.
We are pro children having homes.
I can hear it now. Clay's going to get hate mail because they're going to clip something. Someone will clip it and just. I am what Kim Jong-un said. I totally agree with. And it'll be clipped right
what's
there.
What's going to be clipped is that Kim Jong-un has some really good ideas about population.
Wrong on a lot of things. Like not a big fan of the famine. Not a big fan of the like trying to shoot missiles into Japan. Anti-missiles and famine. Pro kids. He's right about the fact that we are collapsing as a society over the next 100 years. If you look, there aren't going to be enough babies in the world.
We now have our perfect entry point, Hutton, for our first Hate Mail with Hutton segment on this show now after Clay made these comments. Clay, appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Appreciate you all. See you.
Clay Travis, the fearless leader, founder of OutKick.
I'm laughing at that little clip of, that Kim Jong-un has had some good ideas about population. Boom, that's it.
The weirdest stories from the week. That's next on Hot Bite with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. Lost in all of the, hey, man, inspire change. Whitey's bad of the NFL. There are folks in the NFL that are, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not frickin' talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction. And that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at an all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. He's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Like, why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We, as the rest of us, don't have that same grace. And veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? Think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
Good catching up with Clay Travis. Previous segment, Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, so we've discussed this before. You want to build a home, right, on some property that you own.
Yes.
And you want to.
That is the goal one day.
You want to be the house where all of the friends want to go and hang out at. Do you think we'll get to a point where even though it will be the cool place to hang, no one's going to want to hang because they're just willing to stay indoors and text?
That's a great question. So my oldest daughter is so social. Like, she loves to get out of the house and talk to people.
Yep.
And, like, interact face to face. She's 8 years old. So maybe that changes when she gets her own phone, or, you know, she may be getting something for Christmas.
Okay.
Not a phone, but something that, you know, she has that's her own.
But very outgoing, wants to be an actor.
She just made the drama club and did very well in all the testing that they do for trying to do different accents, singing, dancing, on all the stuff. So wants to do all these things. So I think she's going to want to be social and have people over. My contention is, if kids are going to get together, we all had the buddy in high school that it was a free-for-all, that you did whatever you wanted at their friend at that house, right? And you could stay up as late as you wanted. You could come and go as much as you wanted when you got a car. No big issue. That was not my house growing up. That will not be my house either for my daughters. But if it's like if everybody's going to get together and watch a movie and play ping pong and hang out in a basement that I'm close to, I'd rather it be at my house than someone else's house. So I like the idea. And then as you get older, like, you know, grandkids and nieces and nephews or whoever in the family, when you have a gathering, it comes there and then they can hang out. Holidays, you got enough space and room, and then you've got, you know, an area where you can hang out. Like, my dream in life is to have the basement that everyone can go to get away from everything else. There's house and there's basement.
To escape.
Right? Big screen TV, couches,
No judging.
old recliner, ping pong table, big area that, like, opens out into a basketball goal.
You're describing every cool house growing up.
Amen, Hutton. This is my little dream in life. And if I can't build that house, then I will sell that land for profit and then try to go find it on the market. Which, as we know, the housing market is doomed right now because Gen Zers don't like to have sex or have kids. And all they want to do is bet on sports. That's what we learned in the last segment with Clay. But that is the hope, that my house is like the gathering place for
You always
my
wanted a
kids'
truck.
friends.
Now you're a pickup man. I think you will achieve this, too.
And I don't think I'm ever going to go back. I bought one truck, and I'm thinking about, I don't know how I drove a car for so many
another
years.
one.
Now the next vehicle I get will be another truck, so I can't go back.
Let's get weird.
Hate mail with Hutton, by the way.
Oh, that's got to happen. That's a great idea.
For those that never heard it back on our local Nashville radio days, it is a terrific segment. And to give Hutton some credit here, the way in which Hutton delivers the hate mail is the best part, because it is deadpan, serious, over the top,
now
with Hutton's voice, reading these emails or posts, and then Clay having to respond to some of the worst stuff that you've ever heard.
And I forgot how he gave me access to his email. I believe. And I was able to go through and pick out. They were all legit, too.
This was like early social media Twitter days that this would have been happening. So I think a lot of it was email that he got.
Yeah, email or some tweets, but not much. Maybe it was on his MySpace account. I don't know.
It's very hard to make Clay mad.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen Clay angry more times in the last 2 or 3 years than maybe the previous 10 or 15 years. But it's still very difficult to make him mad.
My favorite part about that with Hate Mail with Hutton was having him break down the comments.
Oh,
using certain language or
the best was when
upset about something that's crazy. But they were like, and he said everything was fair game. I remember the guy who was complaining about Clay's kids' names. You remember that?
Yeah. Well, and the ones that were the best were the ones you'd read, and then Clay would either agree with or thought it was pretty funny.
It's that's not a bad.
It's pretty spot on. That's a good joke there that he made about this. So we'll bring that back.
It is time to get weird with Davey Hudson.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Talking now.
Hey guys, a couple of months ago we had a story where we discussed Neymar, the football star, who had an awkward contract relationship with his girlfriend, and just kind of wanted to go ahead and bring this one to the top, talking about tying in having kids from the last segment with Clay on. So Neymar, and I want to make sure I'm pronouncing his fiance's name correctly, but it is Bruna Biancardi. They just welcomed their first child last month.
Sounds hot, by the way.
Yeah, I would imagine so if she's able to date a guy of his status. But they had that weird sex contract, and apparently Neymar broke it. So the couple no longer together, unfortunately. If you remember, the terms of the condition was he could cheat on her, but he had to make sure he wore a condom and he couldn't kiss the other women on the mouth. There were some messages that supposedly leaked from an OnlyFans content creator that led to some drama there. And so after some more issues came to light, they ended up calling it quits.
Sounds like a boyfriend-girlfriend breakup to me.
Yeah. Do we know which bylaw he violated?
I don't have that information. They didn't get that specific, but it looks.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say both.
Yeah.
It is an interesting.
I'm going to say this rich professional football player violated both of those bylaws.
It's an interesting bylaw, a rule to be like, you know what? Your lips are mine. No one's touching them.
Yeah.
And that's it.
No forehead kisses either.
No.
I have decreed the forehead mine as well.
Neymar does, just so we get it out there, he denies any wrongdoing and insists that the messages that leaked were old, and but for whatever reason they weren't able to overcome their differences, and him and Bruna no longer together, unfortunately.
They said, love. It's Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. The only reason to believe in love anymore.
They had a child.
Like you guys talked about, some people they're not having enough sex, and these people they got a sex contract. It's just
Well, if the population was at stake with him and her, we'd be okay.
Well, I mean,
it's with everyone else.
It's not their generation that we're worried about.
That's true. He's older.
I don't have this story in front of me, and I haven't talked about it in probably 6 years, but I'm going to just wing it. Do you guys remember when the World Cup went to Russia, and the local Burger Kings were offering any Russian woman who got knocked up by a World Cup player free food for life? I think there might have been money on top of that as well.
I don't remember it being Russia, but I remember that being the situation in a World Cup location. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, it's just like they're talking about, with the way genetics work, you get knocked up by a professional football star, odds are that kid could potentially have the abilities of his father. And in that case, their team would be much better, we'll say, a generation down the line.
So they wanted a piece of the superstar status in their country.
I can't remember how Burger King felt.
I love how Burger King was the one who was like, we're going to keep the genetics here.
Well, at BK, they do have it their way. So there you go.
And a Whopper.
I was about to say, though, but eating that food's probably not best for that player's long-term status as far as being successful.
If you're that genetically inclined, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think people would be shocked at the diets of some of the best players.
We know a man by the name of Kirby who smokes 2 packs a day and drinks nothing but Pepsi, not Diet Pepsi, Pepsi. And he has 0 health issues.
He's a heart rhythm of an 18-year-old.
Yeah, he's got the weight of a 16-year-old and the life expectancy of a vegan from birth. So he's totally fine. I think he eats 1 meal a day also, and it's always red meat. It's a very unhealthy meal, the 1 meal he has a day.
Basically Al Michaels.
So genetics.
Yeah. What was the Ricky Bobby quote? It's like basically with my high level of income, there's no reason I can't live to be 250, 300 years.
And he doesn't have that high level of income, but he's got everything else.
So.
I'm sure he'll appreciate you saying that.
Well, we know. I mean, come on. People that know Kirby know.
All right, guys. Our next story comes from.
I mean, he's not a real estate developer. Maybe he does that on the side.
I don't think the audience knew that, though.
I'm shortchanging him, but
they put a pig heart in some guy.
I mean, he makes a living.
He is alive.
Yeah, it's good to go.
Man shocked to discover source of headaches for 5 months is pair of chopsticks inside his skull. Now, you might be wondering, how did the chopsticks get inside his skull? This story comes to us from Vietnam, and this man got into a fight about 5 months ago. There for a while, he could not remember how these headaches continued to occur, why he was having so many neurological issues. And whenever he went to the doctor, they're like, yeah, man, like you've got chopsticks shoved into your brain, essentially. We're going to have to perform surgery to get them out. And they're just like, how did this happen? So he starts to think back, and then he recalls one night about 5 months ago, he got super drunk and got into a fight, and then revealed, he's like, oh, yeah, I do think somebody stabbed me with something that night. Now, the big story for
hang on,
through
his
super
nose?
drunk. You would wake at some point. You come to and you're hungover
through the nose,
and you see something hanging out of your nose, or in like you have a pain and blood that would indicate that something went down. I don't think it takes 5 months later you're having headaches. Are we talking splinters here? What is this? Chopsticks plural?
I wish I had pictures to show. I don't, but the CT scan was what revealed that he had this neurological issue and that the chopsticks were in fact lodged inside his skull. 35-year-old man, they don't give his name, but it is from Dong Hoi. So if you're familiar with Vietnam geography, this was in Dong Hoi.
I'm familiar with liars and idiots, and that's
I just can't understand how that you wouldn't know. This isn't like something, I got beat up and don't remember where I got punched,
right,
and then had neurological damage later, and I don't even remember the fight. This is chopsticks lodged through your nose into your brain.
I mean, in the movie The Hangover, he's missing a tooth when he comes to, and he acknowledges that the tooth is missing. It doesn't happen 5 months later.
That's more understandable. Like that story.
Chopsticks.
The plot to The Hangover is more believable.
Also, if you are fighting someone, how do you put chopsticks up their nose? If you're fighting someone.
That's how.
Yeah, throwing stars and everything else is there.
Nope.
Chopsticks.
I think the man's going to make a full recovery, though. It's the important part,
Good for him.
And then
genetics.
Another story. So you guys remember T.J. Houshmandzadeh?
I do.
It's always a fun name to say. Former NFL wide receiver. Well, he's actually had to file a restraining order, or he's seeking another restraining order because there is a woman who pretty much is just obsessed with him and his family. She's even gone to the lengths of changing her last name, which was originally Selkirk, which, no offense if your last name is Selkirk, but I think saying Houshmandzadeh sounds better. But Annette Selkirk has changed her name to Annette Marie Houshmandzadeh in attempts to become closer to TJ and his family. There's also weird situations where she's posting online as though she is the mother of his children. And TJ, as he's filed this restraining order, he's basically just asking the judge, listen, just keep her away from me and my family. She's unhinged.
Is this an ex?
No.
So they have no relationship with each other.
Didn't know each other.
Not according to the court docs. The one thing was the first restraining order was placed on her in 2015, but it was only for 4 years. So after it expired in 2019, I don't know if things had died down, but obviously things have gotten to the point again to where she's now bothering him, and he's like, I need another restraining order.
At what point do you get institutionalized for this if it continues? I mean, they've never met. They have no prior relationship.
I have a feeling they've met.
Probably, but
she's claiming to be the mom of his children.
Well, he's claiming to not have any relationship with her ever, never know who she is, but she's so obsessed with him, with TJ
I don't know who that is. Right.
Yeah, TJ's claiming she's been posing as the mother of his kids.
Houshmandzadeh is the last name. My guess is it's not random. And he's been out of the league for so long that that's certainly not a random.
I would buy it if it was like someone was obsessed with, Tom Cruise. But we've seen crazy people get obsessed with super celebrities. That's the whole plot to The Bodyguard, right? With Whitney Houston's character in it. So, but TJ Houshmandzadeh, that leads me to believe what Hutton is saying, that they have some sort of prior relationship, that she believes she should be with him.
Yes.
That's not a celebrity to the level that I would think that you would obsess over. I mean, look, crazy people are crazy. I'm trying to rationalize with the insane, which is insane by me.
This is
but
very
I
weird.
feel like they knew each other before.
Yeah. To claim you don't know who it is and have never interacted with him, that.
Well, he's not claiming they've never interacted because they've had the restraining order. Again,
Right.
They don't leave the details as what led to the restraining order taking place in 2015. But after it's expired, he's like, listen, we're still having issues. She's TJ's married. He's like, she's contacting my wife.
I think that's the key there.
Yeah, it's a little single white female action going on.
Also,
hey, kids, look that movie up. It's a good one. Bridget Fonda.
I would believe the story from Vietnam, Davey, with the chopsticks, if it were, let's say, a David Blaine type deal where the guy was trying to pretend to be that. In a fight, 5 months later, you realize that chopsticks are up your nose?
Tough to buy. Tough to buy. Good job, Davey.
Some of the move in the portal. That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. The bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here, the Wednesday edition. Hot Bite with Hutt and Withrow across the OutKick Network. True story, arriving here at 6th and Peabody today with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Told Chad it was Thursday. Let's go crush this Thursday.
That's right. Hutton, well-deserved day off on Friday, so this kind of is his Thursday, so I excused it because I said, it is Thursday for you. It's Wednesday for the rest of us.
It's 50% off. Buy one, get one 50% off at the OutKick store. OutKick playing on a new field with their store. That's right. The new OutKick store just launched, and to celebrate, we are offering a buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more. Shop.outkick.com, and you score 50% off. All you got to do is visit shop.outkick.com, add the items to your cart, and the discount is automatically applied. Chad, you want the dad hat?
Yeah, they have something that's labeled a dad hat. It's not like a hat that says dad on it. It's an actual. That's the style is dad.
Well, that would be LaJuan's hat, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's his official brand. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that we've
not
taken the word dad.
Don't worry, Taylor. We have not taken your brand.
We are anti calling someone dad,
unless it's our dad.
Unless it's your father.
If it's your dad, you can say dad.
Yeah.
But fans calling someone dad was just odd to us.
Yeah, it was.
Teach his own.
Chad, are the Braves in the mix for Ohtani? Winter meetings are going on right now in Nashville.
Well,
and this has been a major fail, and I've hit on this weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, that not embracing the craziness of the top free agent period for your sport, and just allowing it to go on behind the scenes. And if anything leaks, it's held against the club. It doesn't necessarily have to be from the club, but it should be from Major League Baseball, from the perspective of let's capitalize on the drama that this campaign for Shohei Ohtani is. And instead, it's just a lot of rumor, and it's just floated out there with very little detail, if any. Just assume that teams are meeting. Assume that the Braves are in the mix, or the Red Sox, or the Dodgers. I mean, we can tie everything together, but it's considering who we follow in other sports when free agency hits. This has been awful.
Yeah, it's been Shohei Ohtani and his camp have not done Major League Baseball any favors with this. Buster Olney wrote about it. I saw today more people kind of jumping on what you've talked about for a while, Hutton, with this. Could be such a big story and a bigger deal for Major League Baseball. But right now it's just not because of the secrecy on all sides. I know Alex Anthopoulos, Braves general manager, was asked about it today. I saw his quotes on. He said, I can't talk about current free agents. He said, we've added Jared Kalenic from the Mariners. We like what it was a clever way of saying it. He said, we love where we are with our position players.
Why can't you talk about current free agents?
Well, I think it's
not
maybe
tampering.
I don't know. He said, I can't talk about the situation with current free agents, but the way he phrased it was clever in that he said, and we're working on getting Alex Anthopoulos on the show also at some point.
Yeah.
But he said something like, we've added Jared Kalenic as a left fielder. We love where we're at with current position players.
Okay.
He said, we're good with our current position players. Well, Shohei Ohtani is probably going to be DH, and then eventually he's going to pitch and DH or play a position. But that was just a clever way of saying, yeah, we've talked to him, and we like where we are with our position players right now, but I'm not going to say anything more about Ohtani. This should be the most talked about story in all of sports, and we should get better updates on what's happening and be able to follow along with what's going on. But it's been kind of quiet with that. The biggest news possibly to come out of the winter meetings today here in Nashville, by the way, we're going to have Bronson Arroyo, former Major League Baseball pitcher, who's in town to play a MLB winter meetings party with his band tomorrow night. But we'll have him in to talk about all sorts of baseball issues. That'll be great. He'll be in studio with us tomorrow at 4:20 Eastern. Is the fact that Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Chicago White Sox, was spotted with Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell leaving his office today. There's a lot of smoke about Major League Baseball to Nashville. The White Sox This is the first time I've heard about them or thought about them as a possibility.
Well, no, it was mentioned
for relocation
with their stadium earlier. We brought this up.
It makes a ton of sense.
It may have been the day you were out. I can't remember, but they were. It was almost like they floated the threat that was out there. Then they came and said that they don't have plans to move to Chicago, move out of Chicago, right? But you want the perception that you would.
Yeah, I mean,
you want the city that would embrace it. And Nashville's top of the line.
Everyone is asked about Nashville, talks about. Now I saw a clip of Bruce Bochy being asked about it and said, "Yeah, I mean this city's got a lot of heat right now. When you look at possibilities for a franchise being added or a franchise moving, you'd hate to see a team like the White Sox that's got that long of a history in a city like Chicago leave, but the economics of it, of starting something new in Nashville, that's one of the fastest growing places in America." That's got a lot of money here right now as well. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I from a historic standpoint, I'd rather it be the Tampa Bay Rays that move and not the Chicago White Sox. But you can understand why White Sox ownership would be interested.
Yeah, and also just I think it'll always be the expansion club is what they've always discussed, right?
Yeah, that's probably the best route to go, where you're not taking someone else's club.
They're definitely expanding. They want 2 more at least.
And it's just there's no other places.
But it's smart?
Nashville. It's going to be Nashville. It's Montreal that's talked about. It's Charlotte. There's not a lot of locales that's discussed. And Nashville's close to the top. If Vegas has their team now.
Right.
That was the other one. If I had to go in order, it was Vegas, then Nashville. Well, Vegas got the A's. So Nashville's next, whether it be expansion or relocation.
I'm just thinking, just based on the financial impact of the league. You got teams right now that are taking out loans. You know, they can't figure out their television network issues right now. Where they're going to be and where the teams are going to reside for viewership for the audience. And so going to Vegas is fine because you're just taking an organization, you're taking your ball club, and it's the same amount of clubs. Is it smart to expand right now, given the landscape of what we're seeing in Major League Baseball?
Well, now from a city standpoint, yes, like they want to sign up and do it, but from an individual owner thing, that's the question.
But also just from the league's standpoint, I'm saying.
Well, that's the question for the owner. You know, if you can make it work fiscally, would you want? You know, can you do it? For the city, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you're bringing in 81 home dates.
Yeah.
With a team.
I'm just saying from an expansion level, want it. Not moving around, you know.
Larson in the YouTube chat says, I'm a White Sox fan who grew up in Chicago, and if I owned the White Sox, I would move yesterday to Nashville, given their current situation in their neighborhood in the South Side, and the stadium situation there, that he would move the team to a new ballpark in Nashville. It does make sense from a market and finance perspective, but you raise a good question, Hutton. I don't know how desirable it is for some billionaire to get involved in Major League Baseball right now, given the economics of it.
So apparently, Chad, Dave Roberts has acknowledged that they've met with Ohtani.
So here's what you can do. This is someone pointed this out, and I now remember this now that it's been said. GMs cannot discuss free agents. Everybody else in the organization can. Managers can. Players can. Everyone. So Dave Roberts talking about it is allowed.
Well,
it's GMs that can't talk about free agents.
But Ohtani doesn't allow it. Based on that report,
he doesn't want people talking about it.
And
so if you want him, you got to abide by that.
Based on discussions on the contract, they will hold it against them. That organization. Yeah. So Dodgers fans are like losing their minds over this. That he's acknowledged that that they've met and everything. I mean, the quote, it's shocking to those covering the sport that he actually, from one of the beat writers, that the Dodgers have met with Ohtani is not a shocking revelation. That Dave Roberts answered questions about it with transparency was shocking.
Yeah.
Now we find out the punishment.
Alib says in the YouTube chat, Nashville doesn't have the culture to support an MLB team. I don't even know what that means, but Nashville is like every other major city in America that if the team wins, they show up. I see that in a lot of diehard baseball markets that couldn't get people to games when the team sucked. And then suddenly they get a lot of people to games when the team is better. Now, they don't have any history in baseball, so you wouldn't know. But in terms of culture, what's Vegas' sports culture? What's Vegas sports culture is they get tons of tourists. Well, guess what Nashville gets? You're going to have a lot of people here at all times with tourism that's going to go to games if they're here in the summer. They're going to pick one game and go to it. You're going to have a ton of out-of-towners. You're going to have a ton of visiting fans for other teams that make the trip to Nashville. I think ticket sale-wise, they'll be fine. I don't buy that Nashville doesn't have the, quote, culture to support a Major League Baseball team. I think it's like a lot of other pro sports markets. When the team's good, they show up. When they're not, they don't. There are very few places that are selling out baseball games or getting a ton of people to park at all times when their baseball team is bad in the late summer.
Najee Harris, not bad about just saying it like it is, according to Najee Harris, a running back in Pittsburgh. He's not even trying to fake enthusiasm when discussing Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback and leadership abilities. Najee Harris on Mitch Trubisky's leadership, quote, "It's fine, I guess." And the follow-up question, how would you describe his style? Vocal, I guess. I mean, that's not even trying to say something nice about the quarterback in a complete sentence. Maybe he's just pissed off that day.
Yeah,
maybe he had a bad practice.
I admire that he's so no holds bar on this, right? I mean, it's I'm sure that the quarterbacks don't love it. Certainly, the former offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, didn't love his bluntness on all this stuff. But I, for one, like the honesty with Najee Harris. And the offense has been bad. We were asked on the way in today, Hutton, from a Steelers fan, what do you think about their chances tomorrow night with Mitch Trubisky? And I think we both kind of looked at him and said, I don't know that they're any worse with Mitch Trubisky. And this is coming from a Kenny Pickett fan. I don't know that there's a sizable drop-off from Kenny Pickett to Mitch Trubisky in this offense.
Not this year, and it should be better.
It should be a lot better for Kenny Pickett, but it's not. So, I think they win tomorrow, and I think they got a great shot with Mitch Trubisky, not that much worse than when they had Kenny Pickett.
That'll be the Steelers' 8th win if they win tomorrow, right? They're 7-5. Considering that division where it started and how bad offensively they are and were, Tomlin gets it done, man.
Winning culture.
Tomlin gets it done.
It is, to me, that is one of the banner organizations for doing it a certain way, doing it at times the hard way, but the right way, and finding the right people for their organization, and just consistent winning. Are they, always the very top of the NFL? No. But are they around the playoffs or in most every year? Yep.
They're a factor.
They are a factor every year, and it is one of the few places that when they draft a guy, I say, yep, that's a Pittsburgh Steeler. That guy makes sense for that organization. How many other NFL organizations do you say that about? That there is a certain ethos with the team, that they draft a player and say, that is that type of player. That is a Houston Texan, or that is a Miami Dolphin. You're not saying that. But when it's the Steelers, yep. Another one that I always think about are the Ravens. Yes. They have a certain style also that when they draft someone,
and the Patriots
it's the perfect guy for that.
Just to tie it back into tomorrow night's game.
Yeah, now if they draft an offensive player that sucks, I say, oh, yeah, that's a Patriot. That is a New England Patriot. That's a guy who's way too slow in the 40-yard dash and is not going to get it down in the NFL. That's who they target.
So Kyle Shanahan's not targeting Dom DeSandro anymore. He had a day to think about his comments regarding the security guy for Philly. Big Dom. I definitely don't have any hard feelings toward Dom or anything like that, Shanahan said. I don't want anyone to go too hard on him. I think he just got caught up in a weird situation, emotional situation, so no hard feelings towards him. I know a lot of people who know him and speak very highly of him. I just couldn't believe we lost our player because of it. Because Dre Greenlaw also was sent packing with the incident from Sunday.
Well, and all he did was something that he would have done in any other situation. You can't go out on the field and do it.
No.
If someone's getting a fight on the sideline or you're at a team event and, there's a scuffle breaking out, that's what a security guy does, is go and puts their hand on the person they think is the aggressor and breaks them up and backs them away. He did what he would normally do. He just walked out on the field and did it. It was close to the sideline, and he walked down the field and grabbed Dre Greenlaw, and Dre Greenlaw rightfully said, who is this guy that's touching me? And they both got tossed because of it.
Well, who was it? I believe, was it for the Bills maybe? I can't remember. That got tossed for getting into it. It was a Packer. It was a Green Bay Packer for shoving the medical guy that was coming in to help with someone that was down on the ground.
Yeah. Who
is it?
Davey?
Wasn't it Quay Walker?
Yes, that's
Quay
it.
Walker, that's it.
He's the only player to be suspended twice in the same season. Quay Walker. Not to be confused with Clay Walker.
Yeah. Clay Walker had a few more hits. Quay Walker hits people.
That's right.
Clay Walker produced some hits.
And also, learning staff members on teams now. We've got Dom, and now with Dom DeSandro and Connor Stallions.
Well, I immediately, the day after this happened, probably not even a day, like 30 minutes after the incident, I'm on X, and I'm seeing stories written up, getting to know Big Dom DeSandro better, a Philly institution, and a full write-up about Dom DeSandro's history with the organization and who he is
recently
exactly.
an honoree at the Big Brothers Big Sisters Gala. Having his
Dom.
photo made with Chris Long.
Who's more patently Italian, Dom DeSandro or Tommy DeVito?
Tommy DeVito.
I mean, I love that Big Dom got a standing ovation when he got kicked out of the game from the Philly
That's a good
fans.
question. I just like the fact that Tommy DeVito's got the. I mean, they're not even going back to Rod Taylor.
Whose mother makes a better red sauce, Tommy DeVito or Dom DeSandro?
Now,
that would be the question for me.
I would say Dom's more authentic because he's not living in his mom's basement.
Maybe he is, though. I didn't get that part of the story. For all we know, he could be living with his parents too.
Maybe so. Just seems like someone that certainly wouldn't be living with anyone. They'd be living with him, with Dom, Big Dom.
Well, he's the big protector wherever he's living of everyone else.
The transfer portal is crazy. The number of quarterbacks and more. We'll discuss that and whether or not we like where it is now compared to where we thought it was going to be.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. You know, lost in all of the, hey, man, inspire change, Whitey's bad of the NFL. There are folks in the NFL that are, well, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not freaking talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction. And that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. He's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Like, why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We, as the rest of us, don't have that same grace. And veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? Think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. If you're joining Chad in the chat on YouTube, search out OutKick. Subscribe to the channel while you're there. OutKick.com also is where you can find the show, plus listening to this great radio partner. We say thank you. Chad, yesterday it was a great list of potential quarterback matchups for Week 14. And it's since been a bit updated. For instance, you've got... Zach Wilson's going to start.
Well, just going through the names of quarterbacks starting, period.
Right,
Bailey Zappi, Trevor Siemian, C.J. Beathard, Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, Aiden O'Connell, Tommy DeVito. It's really a who's who of obscure quarterbacks that'll be starting this week.
And, the Giants opting to go with DeVito and stick with him instead of Tyrod Taylor. Jake Browning's the AFC Offensive Player of the Week in the NFL. It's crazy. But in looking at this list from yesterday, I'm thinking about the coaches and the staff that are on the hot seat, and it's put up or shut up time, and they're either relying on one of these quarterbacks to lead their team, or because of all of this quarterback mess in the league, they still have theirs healthy, and you better win now. You better finish the 4 games with a stretch that is going to impact the postseason. And while I'm not saying that what's going on in Buffalo means, pink slips, I don't care about the schedule when I look at the quarterback play. Josh Allen needs to take over. That's the expectation of where they are. And if you start looking at, really the only one that comes to mind for me with the backup currently playing is Dennis Allen in New Orleans with Jameis Winston. He's feeling the heat. Todd Bowles in Tampa. Baker's still there. Ron Rivera, hot seat. He still has Sam Howell. Robert Saleh going back to Zach Wilson, and I'm going to go back to Zach Wilson in just a moment. Eberflus, Justin Fields. Belichick has had the 15th overall pick in Mac Jones. Now he's with Zappi. And the big one to me, Brandon Staley with the Chargers and Justin Herbert. Go win. Get into the postseason. No excuses. And he hasn't been able to do it. He's out. A lot of the coaches on the move, and I think sometimes that the owners get emotional with their response. They're not patient. Woody Johnson in New York with the Jets, notoriously short leash on coaches. 3 years, peace. And that's kind of the norm now, too. But I think in many cases, Chad, just looking around the league right now, and Davey's hit on it a couple of times, when we have more than 7 openings, could there be 10? I know Schefter has pointed at that, too. I tend to think we might get there because of the landscape of the league, the quarterbacks that are playing, and in many cases, they're playing for coaches right now that are going to be retained. It's about the coaches that have had their guy healthy, and they haven't done anything with it. That speaks volumes, especially in this league this year with offensive play down. You can point to the backups that are playing. I point to the starters that aren't producing and the coaching staffs that are on the sideline with them.
Yeah, I don't know there's anything Brandon Staley can do at this point.
No,
he's a dead man
yeah,
walking.
And a lot of these guys are. But
Sean McDermott's an interesting one to me. If they don't make the playoffs, are they going to make a move there, given that the guy's been very successful in Buffalo and all but really this year?
I don't think so.
They were on the right path, and they took a dip this year, but they've got a great shot. I mean, that's one of the teams you're referencing here, Hutton, that go win. If you're the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen, even with a tough schedule, go work your way into the AFC playoffs, and then definitely all will be fine with Sean McDermott. It doesn't feel like an organization that would make that move with him right now, but that is an interesting one on that fringe of those, 7 to 10 names that Adam Schefter threw out that could be gone at the end of the year.
And look, the Bills are behind the Broncos right now. The Broncos started 1-5, and the Bills right now are in the 10 spot. Denver at 9, Houston at 8 as the first teams out. 1 week can change a lot. But, the Bills on the road this week against Kansas City, the Chiefs coming off their loss, and the expectation that the playoffs go through Arrowhead, this is a massive game for Josh Allen. Back in KC, where you're trying to go through this gauntlet stretch at the end. I mean, forgive me, but I have higher expectations of Josh Allen than I do what I'll see from the Miami Dolphins going into the year, or what I'll see from the Cincinnati Bengals with Browning at quarterback. There should be a higher bar for the Buffalo Bills than what's being discussed right now. Maybe it gets back to that based on the results of what happens on Sunday. But
to me, this game is it for them.
He should elevate that entire organization.
This is it, I think, for the Bills. And honestly, I mean, the Chiefs, lots of questions right now with that team, given the recent play, especially offensively. So, I mean, huge game between those two this Sunday.
Transfer portal, Chad, is crazy right now with the number, just the number of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And the movement where it's just presumed that they're not, I'm thinking of, you've got a little bit of coaching movement, but you have way more quarterback movement. And not just from backups who haven't had their opportunity. I think that's been my perception. It's like, you're not getting the reps. You got to keep the 5-star backup happy. In some cases, that is true. But in other cases, it's the guy that just finished starting and he's bouncing and going to another school. More power to you based on the rules that are in place. But at this point, it's just presumed that you're leaving after a year. That's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. Colin Warner asked a good question during the break, talking about some of his Notre Dame people throwing this question around. At what point will portal opening day on Monday, this past week, be bigger than National Signing Day? I think we're already there. I think it's about equal parts, honestly, because it's all meshed together this time of year. Now, National Signing Day is still going to be a big deal, and you're always going to have the flips on signing day and some crazy developments. But at this point, the hay is in the barn. When you get to the end of the season, you got most of your guys committed, pretty locked in. There's always a few big names still left out there that have not decided, have not committed, but that's going to happen leading up to this December National Signing Day. The portal stuff is all new. So it happens so fast and furious. Brock Vandagriff, who I mentioned earlier, announces he's transferring yesterday, and today he's committed to Kentucky already. I mean, these things happen fast because they've been in the works for months. Sometimes when a guy's not playing, when another team needs that position, they've been talking to some of these players for a long time. So I think we're there, Hud. I don't know that it's bigger, but I think portal opening Monday or portal Monday, whatever we want to call it, that's equal parts as big as National Signing Day now.
Well, then you also have, I mean, you want to discuss tampering or whatever. Max Johnson just goes to announces North Carolina November 28th.
Yeah, he did it before it opened.
Yeah. Now, maybe there's some loophole there as to why he can, but the idea
did he announce it, or I think he did announce it, though,
but the idea that he knows he's going to Carolina during the season, right?
Yeah.
That's definitely happened. And it's happening everywhere. It's not just...
I made it. I mean, I don't think Brock Vandagriff, just decided in
2 days
12 hours
that
he's going to go to Kentucky. I think it's probably been in the works for a while.
And then this is, once again, Kentucky's going down the path of rinse and repeat with the quarterback situation. They went from Levis to Leary and now Vandagriff.
They got Levis for 2 years at least.
They did.
Vandagriff, I think, has 2 or 3 years remaining of eligibility, so he could be a multi-year option for them.
or just a one and done.
Who knows? It's incredible to me. Like, once you get in the cycle, it's tough to pull yourself out of it. So these teams, Notre Dame is kind of going down this path now, it feels like. Once you get into that plug and play, we're going to go pay $1 to $2 million for a big-time transfer, bring them in, and then once you do it a second time, you're that program now.
Right.
So you can still recruit guys, but it's tough to get the big-time 4-5-star prospect to come and play for you if the perception is you are the transfer portal, one-and-done, plug-and-play quarterback school, and some of these teams are now getting that knock about them where they're not really developing quarterbacks within their program. I would still prefer to go recruit top-level high school talent at that position, have them sit for a year, maybe 2, depending on the situation, and work them through your system before they start playing instead of just bringing a different guy in every year to be your quarterback. Now, some instances, you got to do it. Necessity breeds that. You don't have a great option, you feel like, below that, so you got to go get a guy who's got the experience and can come in and play right away. And that's the situation Kentucky's in, clearly. They didn't like what Destin Wade had to offer behind them. They didn't like what their other backup had to offer, so they went out and did it again, what they did with Devin Leary. That makes sense for certain programs.
What do you expect from Deion Sanders? I don't know what to expect this offseason and through the portal. He's saying, he's defending the decision to put Bama in. He's like, you can't have a playoff unless you have Bama or Georgia in the playoff. And he goes, when we expand to 12, the expectation for us is we'll be there. He's like, not that Deion's saying not that that's the dream. He's like, that's the goal, is that Colorado will be in the playoff next year. He wasn't preaching that last year when he took the job.
No.
And now he's confident they're going to hit in the portal. I just don't know, based on the buzz that's out there, if that's going to come immediately or not.
Look,
I would have bet that with the Vandergrift, going in 2 days, announcing where he's going to Kentucky, I would have bet that Colorado, if we were in the middle of the season right now, Chad, I would have bet that they would be one of the schools that would be announcing very fast guys that were going there.
If Deion Sanders has any self-doubt, he's yet to show it throughout his entire life. That's how he's built. He is a confident guy, and he's going to tell you about how confident he is, and he's going to tell you what he's going to do. And for the most part, throughout his life and career, he's gone out and done it.
Yep.
So if there's any cracks in the facade, if there's any doubt about him succeeding at Colorado, and that I'm talking about inner doubt with Deion Sanders, he's not going to show it. He's never shown it. Me watching this from the outside looking in, I have doubts now. They were 4-8 after a really good start. I thought when they're 3-0, they're going to a bowl. I'm looking at the schedule then, I'm thinking they're going to get to a bowl, and it fell apart this year and got really bad. And quickly, all of the holes in the roster when you completely eliminate the prior team. Granted, a bad team, but it showed. They had no offensive line. They had no defensive line. And you can't win in college football without either one of those. So recruiting's not going great for them right now. High school recruiting I'm talking about. Hutton, they got to have it. I mean, he's calling a shot. He's confident about it. They have to go transform this team again through the transfer portal. Now, I don't think they're going to strike out. They're going to get some good players in the portal. Are they going to do enough to make this a bowl team in year one in the Big 12? I don't know. Yeah. And I think that's success for him next year. I think it's elevating this team to get to 6-6. If they can do that, I think that's a win. From my perspective, Deion probably would tell you that's a failure. He probably wants to be in the college football playoff next year. I'm telling you reality. If he can go from Pac-12 to Big 12 and go 6-6 after going 4-8, I think that's success for this program.
Well, and he's downplaying the quarterbacks and others that have left the program too. The quote is, you have to understand, we've not lost anything that we desperately have to have. Now, if you say a player like Travis Hunter or Shador or this guy or that guy, then I've got a problem. And is that a pop-up here? I apologize. Now I'm going to address that. I'm looking at the portal to see quarterbacks and key guys from certain schools where I'm like, ooh, that hurt. They weren't ready for that. Going to be attrition. You're going to lose certain players because that's just life. That is why you constantly are recruiting and improving and creating competition. He also says this, Chad. He downplays the high school recruitment because he wants guys that come in the spring only. If you got to get there early, he says, for the transition phase from high school to college. But he is point blank with what they're after. in the portal. When you watch this play, what did you see? Oh, they just had some protection issues for Shedeur. Oh, if they could just get after that pass rusher. We're going to address that. We're going to address that from the transfer portal and the high school ranks. High school, to me, is like draft choices in the NFL. The portal is free agency. We are in the free agency phase right now, and I'm thankful that we have and will have the wherewithal to get what we need.
That's all fine and dandy. He needs to be in both phases, though. It's not just free agency.
And he's lost some coaches, too.
You've got to do both. Sean Lewis is gone, headed to San Diego State. That was his offensive coordinator.
And his offensive line coach.
Yeah.
He's now the offensive coordinator with
I buy
Lewis.
that the guys they've lost, it's not like they're irreplaceable. Whether they desperately wanted them. I haven't seen a name that I thought, oh, man,
Shedeur's healthy, yeah.
That's a big loss, right? The guys that are good are still there. But he's got to do both. It's not just we're all focused on the portal now because we're in free agency mode. Nope, you got to mix and match. You got to get good high school players in that stick with you, that you can develop, while also adding, and right now at Colorado, certainly, you're going to go heavier on portal than high school recruiting.
Yeah.
But you got to be doing both at all times. And I don't see him doing that. I have doubts. I wouldn't have said that even after the first game of the year when they beat TCU. It made a believer out of me and everyone else. But what I've seen since then, in 1 year at Colorado and now this offseason, I've got doubts.
Isn't it interesting that we know more about the portal and the players in it than we do, and at the free agency phase of college football, than we do the biggest free agent in Major League Baseball history?
Yeah.
Right now.
I know way more about the comings and goings of Cam Ward than I do Shohei Ohtani.
It's crazy. Thankfully, college football allows us to discuss and have those that report the news on said free agency.
Thank God for America's new pastime.
Coming up, we discuss Jalen Hurts and his injury status.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. that was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of the Southern Legend.
Hi, Mike with Henry Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. So, Chad, David Carr has, he has an idea that Mariota should be playing over Jalen Hurts right now.
Just to get him healthy?
Yeah, to maintain his health for the postseason. I think that's a horrible idea. I think it's a horrible idea from this angle.
On its face, I hate the concept of someone who can play not playing them to rest them up or heal them up for postseason. If you can play, play.
Well, agreed. But here's where
if it's something where you're not, if you're 50% and you can rest up in certain situations, then yeah, do that if that helps you heal. But if not, you got to play.
Well, he says clearly Jalen isn't comfortable reading through a defense in a drop back scenario, is what Carr is saying. And some would say he's not even good at it. And he says he goes on to say, is it better for us to play Marcus Mariota right now and let Jalen get fully healthy? To me, this rips out the heart, the juice of the team. You lose a little bit of that fire that comes along with everything that the Eagles are about to me. If you try to wait until the postseason to make sure he's healthy for the postseason, you got to keep just grinding as long as Hurts wants to do it. He did this a year ago with the shoulder.
That brotherly shove played on 4th and inches with Marcus Mariota looked way different than it does with Jalen Hurts. He barely got it. And it was one I'm thinking, oh, they're going to go with the play. Let's see how Mariota does it. You quickly learn that a lot of the success of that play is built on the legs of Jalen Hurts and his strength when they run that play.
But Carr is advocating for Mariota to go in and let him get healthy. I'm thinking, this is a dude that wants to win MVP. You keep that guy in the lineup as long as he wants to play.
Absolutely.
And
you're also talking about a guy who only didn't win MVP because he got banged up late in the year and missed some games.
That's right.
So
you agree,
not missing that opportunity this time.
You do have to have a big picture mentality. You can protect the player from himself in the games, but you also, when you're rolling like Philly with 2 losses and you're coming off of a stretch of 3 games in 13 days, I beg to differ on this. I keep him in.
Yeah, no, that's.
Are you injured or are you hurt? That's the difference.
And unless it's just obvious the guy can't play the position because he's so injured, then he's playing. Play your best players.
What's the monetary value of becoming the official retailer, of sporting goods retailer for Notre Dame athletics?
That's a good question.
That's the one thing I haven't seen. All I know is it can go a long way in helping you pay players.
Yeah, here would be my thing with Dick's Sporting Goods becoming the official sporting goods retailer for Notre Dame athletics is what are the NIL opportunities that attach itself with this?
The other thing you can keep up with is how many jerseys you sell.
When will athletic departments, when they do deals like this, decide to take the money they would make in a straight-up sponsorship for the athletic department and just ask for it to be a 50-50 split in an NIL collective or a fund, or just going straight back to the athletes? Because we know that stuff happens, right? But At what point does it benefit you more to make it a big deal for NIL? For you to attract better student athletes, that's going to help you win bigger. And when you win bigger, donations go up, season ticket prices go up. Yep. Everything is helped by that.
And everything, the price goes up with Notre Dame all the time, the value of the brand.
Yeah.
You know, the TV deals that we detailed. Now you've got the official sporting goods retailer, Dick's Sporting Goods. But, like, Chad, I'm with you. It's like, at what point does the player actually just go? You can only pay so many players to start, right? At what point do the players go to back up for a payout? I mean, right now, the bidding wars, you were detailing this last night with me and Clay. It's like the bidding wars right now between Tennessee and Ohio State are happening behind the scenes. You know, like,
oh, yeah. Well, it's just, at what point do you leave the card table? When you're one of these schools, you're just going to keep going back and forth and getting a higher bid, and it's an auction at that point. And at some point, someone's got to blink and say, it's just not worth it anymore to us to just do this over and over, you know, for a guy we haven't seen play yet or whatever it may be.
And this is the value.
When it comes to quarterback, when it comes to Cam Ward, a name that we brought up in the last segment, I don't know that the number can be, you know, if it's if it's $2.2 million, which has been reported as the asking price. If you're a program that makes a lot of money and you desperately need a quarterback that's very skilled and is a dual threat, then you're paying the $2.2 million. I think that's one you're not leaving the negotiating table over $2.2 million. Now, if it's a 4 or 5-star high school player that is a position of need, at what point do you back away and say, we got a lot of other needs currently on the roster, we got a lot of other needs in different spots, we're not going to continue this game and just, you know, be the highest bidder at all times. You can't always be the highest bidder unless you're A&M maybe, but no one else can always be the highest bidder. So, yeah, at some point you walk away.
How about this? Just the importance of being independent for Notre Dame. You know, if you know the Florida Gators wanted to do this, it's a conference, right? And in Notre Dame's case, it's just them. It's the Irish. That's it. Coming up with this the payout. It's a multi-year contract with Dick's Sporting Goods. But again, that's the value of staying independent instead of joining a conference.
Hun, we don't yet know about Shohei Ohtani, and we're getting no news on that, but there is some baseball news coming down. This coming from Jack Curry of the Yes Network. Juan Soto of the Padres has been traded to the New York Yankees. The Yankees sending over Michael King, Drew Thorpe, Johnny Brito, Randy Vasquez, and Kyle Higashioka over to San Diego for Juan Soto. This is the start of what I think is not quite a fire sale, but a lot of cost cutting that's going to go on in San Diego with that team and them trying to go for it in recent years and it not working out at all this past season. But the Yankees get a huge bat in Juan Soto, so that's going to help them big time.
Well, and isn't it interesting that you get everything done in the winter meetings in person?
It's pretty cool.
Instead of, I say everything, you can take your time in other places, but like,
well, the backroom stuff that happens, like in the hotel suites, and
but like it's really the only sport where that goes down like that.
Yeah, let's all get together and you go in with a plan, knowing who you want to talk to and who you're going after, and you go do it. I like it.
Monday Night Football will have 2 games on Monday night, kicking off at the exact same time, Chad, ESPN and ABC. But the Manning cast will be covering both games simultaneously.
What is the other game other than Dolphins-Titans?
It's the Giants and the Packers. Yeah. And that will be the
ABC
it's
better
game,
than
Green Bay, New York.
Bad Monday Night Football game, 2 bad Monday Night Football games. That's what ESPN's banking on.
But, I mean, you're right. They are bad. On paper in May when the schedule came out, it didn't look like a bad schedule for Monday Night doubleheader.
No.
I say doubleheader. It's simultaneous kickoff.
And we've seen other instances where, boy, this game looked awful when the schedule came out, and now it looks great. This is the reverse of that.
This is what they wanted because they wanted the assurance that they would get one good game.
We're just coming off a week where I said, who would have thought Texans-Jags would be one of the biggest games of the weekend this past weekend coming into the season, that was going to be a pivotal matchup in the AFC South. So now we get the flip side of that. Now it is look good on paper to start, but now terrible with these 2 games.
I'm looking at the matchup. So we got Patriots-Steelers tomorrow night for Thursday Night Football. Packers on the road against the Giants, 6-6 against 4-8. And you have the Titans at 4-8 against the Dolphins in what could be a bloodbath of a game. They're 9-3 on the season.
I don't think either one of those games will be very competitive.
So,
but I could be surprised.
It could be a fun Manning cast, though, with 2 games.
Yeah.
Well, the Manning cast wasn't initially supposed to happen for this week. They ended up adding this, I think, about roughly a month ago. So it was one of those to where they came in and they're just like, we're going to add an extra Manning cast, and we're going to do a simulcast of both games at the same time, which that's what I'm most curious to see is, do they treat it more like a red zone, or is it quarter by quarter?
I bet they'll do a lot of split screen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I'm going to watch. I tell you, I watch that every week when I'm watching Monday Night Football. The Mannings are terrific together, and the guests they bring in now, they really streamlined it this year where the guests are typically more engaged with the game.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a third analyst they have on where they were, feeling their way through it, I think, in the first season. But that's a good question, Davey. I don't know if it's going to be more bounce back and forth or actually have one guy watching one game, the other one commenting on the other, and then kind of bouncing between play to play with both games happening. I have no idea.
The one thing I am looking forward to is when you look at this matchup, I mean, I know Tommy DeVito's in there, but you have 4 young quarterbacks, 3 of which are supposed to be the franchise quarterbacks for their teams. So seeing how Peyton and Eli will kind of dissect like where they've been throughout the season, what they might potentially be moving forward, I think that's at least a good component and aspect they can dive into.
Sounds like Trevor Lawrence is pushing to play Sunday on the road in Cleveland.
I was shocked when Dr. Chow said 50-50. This was yesterday with his analysis of the injury and watching it.
So that's where tying in David Carr and what he was saying about Jalen Hurts. You've got Trevor Lawrence with a bum ankle against that pass rush in Cleveland. Is that smart? Lack of mobility?
Trying to hold on to that number 1 spot, though.
Again, I go back to the whole discussion with Hurts. I mean, if he's good enough to go, you go.
Yeah.
You go with your guy and don't fear injury, but
Is
it the smartest thing to do?
He says he feels a lot better, is all he said.
It's almost like you're playing the mathematical game of we could lose this game and be fine if you're Jacksonville, right? You're looking at the rest of the schedule, say if we know he's going to be –
This is where you think long-term.
If he's 60% this week and we know he's going to be 85% next week, the mathematical probability of losing this game and not playing him and still being okay, is it worth the rest him up, get to 85% and win the rest of the games or as many as possible because you're trying to win the division is what you're doing right now if you're Jacksonville. So how does that all play into it?
And you just dodged a huge bullet on the injury front with that. And I believe go ahead.
I was going to say Christian Kirk's also. They lost him, so he's likely out for the year. They say 6 to 8 weeks, but yeah, it was I think it was like core muscle is what he ultimately messed up.
I don't know what those are, Chad.
I haven't seen mine in years since I was about 19 years old. Last time I saw a core muscle. Those injuries happen more and more. I don't feel like in the late 80s I heard a lot about core muscles.
Was groin technically a core muscle?
Oblique tears.
Oh, I think it's core.
Okay.
It's a core muscle.
It's hardcore.
Yeah. So I view the Hurts thing different. I do. Because MVP race, and again, there's a moxie and there's a rhythm and the engine, the fuel. If it's one game for Jacksonville, I wouldn't want to put him, if he's that hobbled behind the offensive line that allows pressure, and Cleveland knows how to get it. But it's to be determined if he's actually going to play. It'd be C.J. Beathard if he doesn't.
Again, I think you're just playing a math formula. And it's all about, you got to really, this is one where you really have to trust your doctors. And if your doctors are saying, it's this now, here's the risk. If it gets hit a certain way, it's going to revert back to this. Versus if he rests and goes through treatment for the next 9 days, 10 days before the next game, looking at it from now on, then it's going to be this. And then you just have to decide what's best for the remainder of the season. And if it's we need him to win this game and we're willing to take the risk, then play him. And if not, you don't. I think it sounds simple, but to me it all boils down to trusting your doctors and trusting what they're telling you about the risk versus how much he's actually going to heal up moving forward. Or if it's just hey, it's going to be a problem the rest of the way. Each week it could be a different level of problem, so you're not going to be hurt playing him, then you play him, knowing that it's just going to be an issue.
Yeah. International ice hockey, they're mandating the neck guards for the Olympic Games.
This is a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, the NHL will have that.
When you had the incident that we know took place with the guy dying because the skate hitting him, I just think that's, to me, that's a good enough reason to go ahead and say, even if it's uncomfortable, you guys can wear the rubber turtleneck or whatever it is that you wear during the game. We can make that happen.
Yeah, it was Adam Johnson.
Seems like an easy trade-off to me for living.
Yes. And the turtleneck is a good way to describe it. And I'm talking with some people just that work within media for the NHL. They say players are more open to the idea than not of adding more equipment. A lot of times players want to reduce equipment.
Yeah.
This one would seem necessary.
Speaking of hardcore, hockey players.
Yes.
Hardcore people.
Yes.
The ones that want to remove equipment, especially hardcore.
They would not remove chopsticks out of their nose.
Probably wouldn't know that was in there either, though.
Back at it tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern.